Halvar, you are prowling, and your vision is red, and your breathing is coming in like quick gasps, but you're not tired. Every splash of blood is like invigorating, and every stab of the spear is like as natural as breathing to you. And this like Reaver leaps towards you, but you dodge under his clumsy strike. It's like in slow motion, and you remember what Grim had taught you, and you like duck under it. And you step forward and like smash your heel into the back of his knee, and he like falls. And he tries to grab at your tunic, and you smash the shield into his brow, and his like eyes roll back, and he hits the ground. And then you stare in like wonder as your spear like stabs through him. All these like movements sort of happening automatically. You've been wandering through the battlefield for what feels like hours. Your Jarl is gone. It's taken away by Thorin. And still there are Reavers and a Skulfin to kill. And you can feel a stab and look down and see this like a Skulfin woman jab a knife into your calf. But you don't cry out in pain. There's actually like a laugh that comes from you, this like deep-throated like laugh, sort of mania. And instead you like kick her in the face with your boot and follow up a moment later with a spear to the throat. All around you, they're still fighting.
Halvar is not himself. The fear that he felt at the beginning of the battle long melted away. He moves up to another, finish him off. The man's holding his guts in, although failing at it. He might, if he had more of his senses about him, think that he was giving this man some mercy, but he doesn't. He just knows that he's an enemy and he must be dealt with. He drives the spear in and listens as the air hisses around the tip of his spear. And he goes to move to another when he feels a gruff tug at his tunic. He turns to try to drive his spear, not spear, but his shield, the rim of it into the man. The man stops it deftly. Is Grim in the battle? He was, yeah?
He was, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and he sees the dour face of Grim, blood spattered itself, looking at him. And he pauses for a moment, and it's in that moment that he starts to feel this bloodlust start to fade away. His hands begin to shake. He doesn't know it, but tears are running down his cheeks. He just feels the wetness and thinks it's more blood. And he looks at the big man.
Yeah, like when the bloodlust sort of vanishes and the adrenaline stops, like suddenly there's just like this agony that like courses through you from all of the like dozens and dozens of wounds that you've taken, like a cut here and a punch there and a bash of a shield there. And like what was this sort of like mania and this like insane like need to kill and like a laughter at it now is like this like disgust and exhaustion, and you can almost like fall over from the exhaustion. All hits you at once, and your like vision spins a little bit. And he like looks at you and says, "Boy, Halvar."
Halvar forces his legs stiff through fear of them buckling under the weight of his own armor. Yes, yes. He seems to shake his head, hoping to clear the frenzy. We have won.
Sit, boy, sit. And he'll like put a hand on your shoulder, and it feels like 1,000 tons of bricks that just like lay upon you, and you like have to sit down onto this like rock. And he like squats down opposite you, and you can see that he's like injured himself, though not like terribly. His nose has been broken, that's clear, and his left hand is like wrapped in a bloody cloth, but otherwise he's seemingly okay. You're alive, by the gods. I was sure that you had died. You were in the thick of it with that wolf's tooth cunt, eh?
He runs his hands through his hair. Was once braided, but now many of it come loose in the fray. He smiles. It's weak. To be honest, just stabbed at anything that moved.
He puts a hand on your shoulder, and again, it's like this insane weight, and you feel yourself slump. That's all right. That's the best thing you can do. You're still here, still alive. And he'll like sort of like slap you gently on the cheek. Still alive.
He welcomes the larger man's kindness. Though he nods his head slowly, he remembers that others were not so lucky. Few of those scenes flash through his mind's eye, and then he remembers. He stands up quickly and almost falls over for the effort. The Jarl. I remember he was taken down. And he looks feverishly across the battlefield, looking for any signs of his Jarl.
He's gone, boy. They've taken him.
Taken him where?
I don't know.
I must go to him.
Calm. The woman who's with him. Always. I don't know her name. She took him.
He kind of stumbles. Doran.
Yes, on a stretcher. Her and a few others. They've taken him somewhere.
And he starts to take a couple of steps, and he can no longer do it. His legs give out, and he stumbles, falling to his knees. He feels one of them slams into a stone, and the pain is dull. I'm a Jarl's man. I should be with my Jarl. And he looks at Grim.
Yeah, we all should be. And he like looks around and he shouts, Godriksson! And there's like a shout of response of like a couple of men around who like just do like a but of the actual Jarl Godriksson, there's no sign either. Skjalmod, you are floating, warm and pleasant, and above you, like as you open your eyes, there are these ravens flying in a strange pattern of these 3 interlocked triangles. Like looking to each direction, you can see you're being carried on a stretcher, but no one is lifting it. It's just floating through this like long grass. There's no bumps, no nothing like that. And you blink, and then you open again, and the sun has moved in the sky, and the ravens are still there. But at the end, carrying the stretcher, is your father, and he like turns with this grim countenance and like frowns at you. Well, look at the fucking state of you. What kind of mess are you in this time, boy?
They killed me.
He like sighs as if that's very inconvenient. Your brother would never get in this kind of mess, eh?
He died.
Yeah, but not like this. Where are we taking you? Where are we going? Where do you think?
I thought you knew.
Valhall.
Skjalmod's fearful to nod in case his father's toying with him, but eventually, like he does, though it pains him from the stretcher. Hopefully, he'll nod.
We have to keep walking, and eventually the Valkyries will find us, I think. That's how they got me. And you blink again, and you're beneath trees. Your father is gone. Each tree is a great ash, and you can see eagles atop each one and squirrels running and snakes around the roots. And this powerful arm is carrying your stretcher, and you reach out to it. It's a smiling face of a Valkyrie. Don't worry, Skjalmod. We're taking you home, she says. And her voice is like musical, like 100 voices all at once. We're taking you home.
He relaxes, and I think the pain kind of goes in his fever. And he relaxes, smiling at her. And by home, he thinks she means Valhall. He looks back like the trail that is come, and is briefly assaulted by thoughts of work undone in the fens, the danger rising to the west. and like fears for the people of Asblot and for Thorin and Noki and the others. Then turns back to the Valkyrie and the prospect of Valhall. I guess it's something that people like him aspire to. So on like the precipice of a spiritual fulfillment, he'll try and push those thoughts from his mind of what lays behind him, though fails despite the glory and like beautiful splendor of the Valkyrie.
Thorin and Noki, you're like carrying this stretcher and you're like exhausted already from an hour of marching, and your arms are like burning from holding it, and you can feel like Skjalmod like reach out and grab your wrist, Thorin, and he's just mumbling, "Home, home." As the two of you and like two other warriors are like have been jogging for the best part of an hour to bring him to the witch.
Thorin feels his hand and looks down at the face beaded with sweat and shakes her head. He's feverish, delirious. Faster. She's trying as she goes to think back to what she'd done wrong. She pledged herself to serve Skjalmod, to protect him. And she did not. And it is bitter as she looks down upon him.
Yeah, you get that flash again of like the sword slicing through the arm and the spray of blood, and at the same time Godriksson like letting out a scream of pain and all of the battle like whirling around you, and you like try and focus on like just continuing to run and not stumbling on the uneven ground as you like continue to jog in the direction of the fens. Another like hour will pass in mostly silence. Occasionally Skjalmod will like mutter something under his breath. It's very hard to like understand what he's saying, but a lot of it he seems to be like in a trance. But eventually your eyes do focus, Skjalmod, and you blink away those illusions, and the Valkyrie is not a Valkyrie at all, but it's Thorin who carries your stretcher. You're beneath some kind of forest, and it's quiet, but for the grunting of the people who carry you. And there's like throbbing pain in your left side, and it comes flooding back to you. The arm is gone.
As the delirium leaves him, he's like smiling at the Valkyrie, thanking her. She takes him home. But then like a shock white of lightning agony is brought careening into the fens and clutches at the ruin, probably like too painfully, not compensating for like the lack of arm and elbow there. Arm and shoulder. And it just causes him further harm, so that he like groans and rolls over and retches, vomiting.
You would see this Noki and Thorin as you like carry the stretcher, that he like seems to be like awake more so than he has been. You're like running through a forest at the moment, like along the banks of the river. It'll be a long time before you get to the fens, but you're far away from the battlefield now, or far enough, you think, that you could potentially stop.
We lost, he says, pained, though like the shock of his wound is like sending stars to fuzz his vision.
Halt. Skjalmod.
Thorin, I see you.
It is good. No, Jarl, we have not lost. Not the battle.
Where are we? Why?
Thorin looks over at Noki, almost embarrassed to admit to Skjalmod her decision.
His face would go worried at that, not knowing and looking between Nocky and Thorin for some answer.
Nocky would say, I don't know how close we are in terms of miles or whatever to the fens, but he'll just give a...
Yeah, you'd think at least a day and a half before you would get there to the fens, like to the start of the fens, and then to the witch like another half day. So probably 2 days from here to the witch.
So Nocky would just say, we're a day from the fens, without mentioning the witch, and then throw a look to Thorin.
Why are we here, Thorin? I should be with Einar and our men. Ah.
You are gravely injured, Skjalmod. I thought... I thought to seek the witch. That she might restore you.
My thanks for what you would have paid. But this, my arm, it belongs to the woman who claimed it, and to the wolf tooth. It's theirs, not mine. But you did what you thought was right.
I should have protected you, Skjalmod.
You did. I live. My thanks to all of you. But please, you must turn back. I would see Einar and our men.
One of the soldiers who was like running and carrying the stretcher, he's like breathing heavily, and he just like presses on one nostril and like fires a snot rocket into the dirt. But other than that, doesn't say anything.
I'll try and walk if I can, though I don't know how successful I'd be.
Thorin would insist that you not. Jarl, you have bled much.
Is there anywhere between here and the battlefield, like a homestead, a farm, anything like that, that we could kind of do like a meet halfway? We go there and wait for people to come to us.
Yeah, there's definitely like farmsteads and stuff around that you could like impose yourself on. You've been running down by the river, so you're also not too far out of the way of going to Heideborg, which is Einar's castle. But yeah, like within, I'd say, half an hour, you'd find a farmstead somewhere that you could like stop in.
Can we offer them silver or food so that we can stay in their barn and like rest there and send like a runner to the battle and maybe get things sorted out there and have people come to us? I don't imagine they'd all want to kind of sit around a battlefield anyway after they've done what they need. So maybe we'll do that unless you guys have any objections. Impose ourselves on the farmsteaders and have just people come to us. Maybe send a runner to find Halvar and the others and get things in order there and come back to the report at the farmstead. Try and be generous enough to the people that it's not too much of an imposition, or if it is, that they're well compensated.
So you start moving towards one of those farmsteads, that being the plan. Back in the battlefield, round them up! Magni is like bellowing at the top of his voice. He's drenched in blood, Halvar. Little of it is his own. His blonde beard and hair have like turned entirely red. And he stalks through like the assembled men like a ghost of discipline. Everywhere he goes, men stand up straighter or like shrink smaller. He like is walking up and down through like those who've been assembled of their lines and of yours, Halvar, and he stops next to you and like places his massive hand on your shoulder, and like with Grim, it's like this insane weight that like presses down. Which ones speak our language? He asks you. you've been organizing the prisoners into groups with Graham and a couple of others. There's one group that you've like got seem to be like low-level reavers who like don't speak or don't even seem to understand like your tongue. There's 10 of those. Then there's like a couple of wealthier carls with swords and mail. They don't speak the language either. It's about 10 of those. And then there are people who can actually speak your language, and there are 2 of those. And there's this one other man among them who has been like kept on his own. His whole skin nearly is covered in tattoos, and he's got this like forked beard. He looks wiry and strong, although by the look of him, like he wears all these like bone necklaces and like bone rings and things like that. And people think he might be a priest or a galder, and so they haven't messed with him. And so he looks to you, Halvar, and obviously he's made up his decision as to who he's going to keep, but he looks to you anyway and asks, which ones would you keep, boy?
Halvar thinks on the question, his eyes slowly cast across the groups. And he stops on the tattooed man. That one is dangerous. I fear maybe Violet himself.
He nods at the assessment, and he like gives a nod to like 2 of the nearby men who will like walk over to him, and they like tie his hands behind his back and shove a rag into his mouth so that he can't cast any spells or like give any curses, and they bring him off to one side.
And as they're doing that, Halvar would continue and say, those 2 there, they can speak our language. The others cannot.
He nods again, and those 2 are like pulled off to where he is. And then he looks at you, and the rest can't speak our language, wouldn't make good thralls. What do we do with them?
And that's where I think Halvar's mouth goes dry. He wishes he could spit now, but because he's seen other men do it. He puffs his chest out and tries to meet Magni's gaze, but he fails after several seconds to keep it. They are no good. They are a threat to us. We killed them. And he says it without any real conviction, more as though he's a question to the man rather than an assessment.
If we take them as thralls, well, likely they'll try and kill us at some stage, and if even one of us dies, it's not worth it, I think. And so, yes, they're more useful to us dead. In fact, they could be quite useful to us dead. We string them up here on the border and tell those Iskulfin fucks who's in charge. He like gives a brief look across the assembled Iskulfin.
Yeah, I think Halvar would swallow hard when he hears that as Magni turns away, knowing that he at least plays a part in the butchering of these men. He senses it's different to him. It's one thing to kill a man to save your life in battle, but to order the butchering of them, Halvar struggles with. But he nods. I'm certain that's what the Jarl would do. He's a wise and just man. He would send that message, yeah. Yeah, and he seems to be more talking to himself, maybe a little delirious, exhausted, feeling the hurts of the battle.
Magni nods and he looks up and down the line, and so he just starts counting 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 of your people, and he goes, all of the ones over there, and he sends this group, including you, over to one side, all the 2s over to the other side. Everyone who gets a 1 is to bring a man to a tree and hang him. Everyone who gets a 2 is to decapitate one of the prisoners and bring their heads and lay them across the border. And he just like does it very casually, and to him there's no problem, and he like goes and starts hacking heads off men. And like all the other men, like some of them you can see are uncomfortable with like killing prisoners, but like not most of them. And like the rope is like divvied out, and you're given like a length of rope, and this like man with his hands tied behind his back, you need to bring him to a tree. Like swept up in all the action, like everybody just starts moving, and everyone just like no one thinks twice about it, and everyone starts moving in different directions towards like copses of trees and things like that. And you're left standing there with the man who like has like a hard look in his eyes.
I think Halvar would look down at his hands, his half hand, and the full the rope resting across it. The look on his face is if he's holding some sort of serpent or something vile. He looks to the tree. He watches the other men. He hears the choking as men are hoisted up, their feet kicking. Clears his throat, looks as hard at the man as he can with his young, youthful face, and shoves him. Move.
He does, and like walks of his own volition towards the tree, and like looks up at it, and then down back at you, and he's like says something in like his Norse tongue that you can't understand, but it's clearly some kind of insult.
He would throw the rope up over a branch and pull it tight. Then he would pause for a moment, back to the man. He knows he can't understand what he says. And he would just say, "This is no way for a man to die." And he looks for where Magni is.
So he's like quite a bit away across the other side where like half of the soldiers are, and you can see he's like talking to one of the other warriors, but he's got like his a fistful of another like prisoner's hair, and he's like talking, and then mid speech basically just like hacks the axe halfway into the guy's neck and like pulls it out, and then with the second like rips the head free, and then just like tosses it towards the border.
I think Halvar would reach at his belt, and he has a this knife that he's had since he was for as long as he can remember. It's dull, it's plain, and he forces it into the man's hand, and he says, "May you find honor in Valhalla." And he would just move away quickly and just tug with all of his might, using his weight to pull the man up.
So as you like hand him the knife and begin to walk away, he like looks at it and looks at you, and he's like trying to figure out what's happening here. Doesn't quite understand it, and then he tries to stab you with it.
Oh, I thought his hands were tied behind his back.
In front, sorry.
Okay, then
that's okay. If you want to
retcon that, yeah, because I don't think Halvar would do that.
Okay. Well, yeah. If he has a chance, he's going to try and take it, basically.
Yeah. So let me just retcon that. So Halvar won't do that. He would there would probably be that long pause as he looks and he watches the other men doing it. He would look to the heavens and say, "Odin, forgive me if this is not what you would want me to do." And then we would heave on the rope, and he would just feel the tugging weight of this man as he heaves with all his might to get him up, his feet off of the ground, kicking, fighting for breath. I imagine he starts to vomit at one point, and he just holds the rope, turns his head away.
Yeah, the man like pulls his bound hands in front and like tries to pull at the ropes around his neck, but is like unable to do so, and he's like grunting and trying to save himself. His like skin turns purple very quickly, but until like his hands are like stuck there at the rope at his neck, and then he just sort of dangle. There, you yourself are like exhausted, and like the holding him there and like the sound of it all is entirely too much. And when eventually he like stops squirming and stops breathing, and you let go, he like thunk onto the ground. You feel like this like wave of sickness come over you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think he just lets go of the rope, like it's poison or it's burning him, and he would stagger away to some bushes, and what little it was in his stomach, he spits up. He just retches.
You kind of lie there on your back, looking up at the tree, the dead man or dead men all around you in this like copse. And as you're like breathing heavily, like a nearby warrior will like come over and with two others, like hoist that man back up into the tree and like tie it off so that he's hanging. A clearer message. And that goes on for like some time until finally like all of the prisoners that aren't going to be taken have been killed and left as a sort of message. To that stage then that Magnu will begin like shouting again, get everybody back up on their feet. There's no rest to be had. Basically like gather all together. Everyone is to eat, and then everyone's to march back towards Skjalvik. In the farmlands, you've been walking or jogging, I guess, for a little bit of time, and you can see up ahead this like farmstead. It's got like a fence around the inside, and this like cow like looks up, sort of bemused as you approach. It's like chewing the cud, like looks at this strange assembly: 4 soldiers, 4 warriors, and this one on the stretcher. And as you like come closer, you'll see that there's like a man outside. He's like whittling something with a sharp knife and a stick, and he like looks up at the strange approach. But he sees that you're in mail, most of you, and he looks quite worried about it. He like puts down the knife and like walks to the door and picks up this like long-handled axe and like walks to the gate of the fence. Yes?
Oh, we mean no harm. We're wounded from yonder battle. Beseech you to give us hospitality, and we have metal and food and coin to make gifts to you. But as you can see, we've been grievous wounded. I implore you, sir.
Are these Skjalmod's lance, or this is still
Einar.
Einar's? Okay.
Yeah, it looks between you, and you can see what he sees basically is a man with a brand on his forehead and 2 like nasal hound warriors, and then like this big scary woman warrior and a man with no arm. Doesn't look like the kind of crowd you want to let into your house, and he's like wary about it, but he knows like he's kind of responsible and is supposed to let you in.
This is Jarl Skjalmod, friend to Godriksson. You will not be harmed.
All right. Your oath on that.
Ah, you have it.
Still looks uncomfortable, but nonetheless will like open the gate and let you guys come in. There's like 2 buildings. One is like a barn, and one is the house in which they live. And he like leads you towards the house itself. Inside there are like numerous children sort of running around of various ages, most of whom are working, and like a thin sort of gaunt woman who's like working at cooking. And she like, her eyes like widen at the sight of these people like coming into the house, and she like says, what's Sven? Who are these people? What? And he like gives her this like look of like, I know, I understand. I don't know. So he goes to her and like has a quiet conversation. And then she steps forward and she says, the barn is a better place. You can't bring this bloody business into my house. It won't do. We can set up a table out in the barn for you, something like that.
My thanks. Any help would be appreciated.
You see that Thorin was about to speak and protest the thought of her Jarl in a barn, but when Skjalmod shows such graciousness, she bites her tongue and nods her thanks.
Torvi, and she like makes this like gesture, and one of the older girls comes over, help them, and she does. She like follows you or brings you rather to the barn and like opens it up. There's like 2 donkeys in here, a couple of pigs, and some goats, and she like is able to pull out this table, and you can like lay him across the table. She like looks wide-eyed between all of you. How can he has no arm? How can we help? What do you need?
A place to lay down for us to make a camp, some food, the means to have a fire for ourselves. And one of the men with Noki, I'll just get them to like hand over some hack silver or like a fine dagger or something like that to these people.
Yeah, the silver. Her eyes are like wide at it, at the amount that isn't a big deal for you, but for them is like a couple of months' work. And she like nods eagerly and goes back into the house. And like some minutes later, maybe 20 or 30 minutes later, like 4 of the kids come in and they have like the best stuff of the house, like cooked pork and like all this like delicious food that's been brought out, fresh bread, and like mead and watered down wine and things like that, or like brought, as well as like clean clothes and things like that, and like buckets of water and things for fire. And they kind of like stand there now, like watching, seeing if you want anything else. Obviously, been told like if they give us this much money, you do whatever they tell you to.
Whatever price your father names for that pig, we'll pay. We'll meet it, have it butchered and cooked. We're expecting people to come to us. We've sent a runner off to my men. More of them will come, though. You have my oath, as with Thorin's, that they know their place and the laws of hospitality.
Yeah, Tori will nod, the oldest daughter, and will like see to that. She'll go back inside and like there'll be a brief conversation. The father will come out and there'll be a very brief discussion where he asks for what again to you is like not a big amount, but it's probably more than the pig is worth. Not by much. He's not trying to like fleece you or anything.
I'll pay him more than that. Whatever he names, I'll pay him a bit more than that. Because I imagine the man probably wouldn't want to like name a price that he might otherwise name to a common man. Exactly,
yeah. And so like he's paid for the pig, and he'll like bring it inside and begin the butchering and things like that, and the cooking of a great deal of food. And back and forth, the children kind of run. Like some of them are only like 3 or 4 years old, but they're like running in with like a loaf of bread and like placing it on one of the tables and stuff like that. Everybody's helping as best they can. So you sent one of the lads off to run, right? One of the soldiers to go to the battlefield.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe between then we can have some water boiled up and like clean out our wounds and strip any like bloody or ruined clothes and like get some off the peasants.
Yeah.
And as before, be pretty liberal with the coin. I don't want it to be like too much of an imposition. So
your arm is like bound mostly with like clove that's been like shoved into the wound to stop it from bleeding. Now you probably don't know that, but the others would. That is not a good way to stop that from getting infected or anything like that. That's something that has to be done sooner than later. But it's also a question of like, does anyone have the kind of skill to like deal with that? But I guess it's kind of like the elephant in the room and nobody's talking about it. Like everyone's like cleaning their little wounds, like scratches here and there and scrapes and even some stab wounds and things like that. But nobody's thinking about like what happens when we pull those rags out of the wound. Yeah. And I guess Skjalmod, you'd be like pale and like, although you don't feel like, I guess you feel a little bit dizzy and like a little bit sweaty and things like that as the day goes on.
we're gonna have to clean it out with like boiled meat or wine, and like pull out any stuff that's in it, and then hack away the flesh and burn it out, and then peel that skin over the stump and cauterize or stitch that in. So the girls here probably make dresses, and like the mum looms, and the father's a butcher and like husband of animals. So they really have the skills, like rudimentary skills needed for that. The fine skills, I'm not sure if like anyone between myself and Godriksson at this battle or in this vicinity would, they wouldn't have like fine skills in that.
Yeah, you
so
think like,
I'd say that
Chilric maybe would be the kind of person who would have like actual knowledge of medicine, you know, like as far as it exists in Iscloft. But like really those kind of skills, like surgery, doesn't really exist. It's a question of like spit and glue and seeing what works.
And going to Chilric means 3 days or 2 or 3 days, like, and going through the swamp as well. So yeah, I'll tell Torvi that she and her mother should like burn some knives and pokers, boil meat and wine. We'll have to pay for that as well. I'll find some good leather to bite down on, and probably hold Thorin's hand with my good hand, with my only hand.
Yeah, so the process begins of the the cauterizing and the stitching of what is going to be a grim procedure.
Noki's probably done something similar to this before, so maybe trust him with the red hot poker.
Yeah, Torvi and the mother and like the others are very nervous and like very pale at the sight of all this blood and like at the idea of what they have to do, but they understand it in principle. The man as well, like Sven, like he gets it in like a base sort of sense, but it's very different doing it like to butchering an animal when you're working with a living human who's like screaming in pain. And so there's a lot of like build up and a lot of like cloth being boiled and a lot of wine being boiled and things like that. Before finally, like, I guess it would begin. Do you want to have it happen before the people get here, or do you want to wait until people get here, make decisions, and then go through it before night?
No, I think do it now before too many men can see me scream and cry and like curse and plead. I'll say to Noki, like, I'll probably try and tell you to stop, but like as soon as like the fire touches the blade, like don't listen to me anymore. Like just do what needs to be done.
And Thorin would set the other men outside that they'd not have to see the Jarl, and try and give him as much privacy as possible while holding his hand and letting him just crush her finger bones, presumably.
So you actually think that you'll need all of those men to like hold him down, because the pain is going to be such that he's going to be like kicking and screaming and like trying to pull himself away. So you'll probably need at least the 2 men that you brought with you to like hold him physically down.
Yeah, then she would absolutely tell them so.
So the process begins. This like boiled alcohol, which is as alcoholic as a drink that they have here. It's sort of like a fortified mead. It's like boiled and then poured onto the wound, and the agony is like pretty insane already. And then like the pulling out of the cloth that's been like shoved into the wound, which saved your life. Halvar, like quick thinking, just like shoved a bunch of cloth in there to stop the bleeding. You like pull it out and like uncoils and like with a wet thump hits down onto the ground. And there's like a sort of thick blood that like pours out, as well as like pus already from the wound. It's like hot to the touch, and you can like feel it even like radiating Skjalmod like next to your head. And like when the cloth is pulled out, like all of the people who are like looking at it all do like a or like a fuck, like it's very hard to look at, and like many of the girls who are like working on it like have to like turn away. Many of the or like are like in tears at the thought of having to like work on it. At this stage, like the like hot knives are brought forward, and like Noki and Sven, the butcher, will begin to like cut away pieces of flesh that are like not necessary. I think at this stage you'll probably pass out, Skjalmod. I can't imagine like going through that level of
back
pain.
on the cart. He's back on the cart with his father.
Yep. So they like cut away at the flesh that's like gone rotten and putrid already. Sven is like pouring sweat, and so are you, I imagine, Nucky. Like it's hard work, and like all lit, I guess, by just like torches and things because it's like relatively dark in the barn, and like the other light is like the white hot blades that are doing the cutting. It's like cutting away at this wound, and there's like this like stench. What's weirder about it is it kind of smells good. It's like cooked flesh. Smells kind of like pork as you're like cutting away the burnt flesh. That goes on for a long time until you think it's clean. Then more boiled alcohol thrown in on top to like clean out all the recesses, and like more examination. Until finally you think that it's done and you think it's like clean as it's going to get, and then like the pieces of skin are like folded together, and Torvi and the mother begin like the sewing of the stitching through the skin with like a curved needle. The whole thing takes quite a long time, maybe 2 or 3 hours, with like many people working in concert. And Skjalmod has been like unconscious and pale for a long time. There's blood all over the ground near where he was. The animals have been freaking out in the barn at like the smell and like firstly of the screams and then of the smell and of the fire. But eventually, after like a couple of hours, it's quiet and like the white hot blades are like dumped into barrels of water. And Sven like leans back in a chair and like wipes sweat from his brow and like flicks it onto the ground. And he like looks between all of you. He's like clearly terrified because he might have killed Skjalmod there, and he has no idea. He's never done anything like this before, like not to this level. And he's very afraid of that being a reality.
I think once the gory work is done, and Nocky probably sees this look, he's probably either the other side or next to Sven when this happens, and he'll probably give him a clap on the back and a reassuring nod. He's still grim-faced, but just to give the man some reassurance.
I did the best I can.
So, it was asked of you. Do no more.
Do you think it will work?
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. By will alone, there's none stronger. He'll pull through. Thanks to you.
He like smiles sort of nervously. The wife is utterly pale, and she's like sitting, like not looking at Skjalmod. Her like hands are shaking, like covered in blood, and she like puts them into a barrel of cold water and is like trying to wash, but her hands are like shaking so heavily that she's like struggling to do it. She like eventually will like take them out and like wipe them in a cloth and like come and sit next to her husband and just like hold his hand. They're like squeezing their hands very tightly, like nervous.
It's a bit of time before Thorin realizes that everything has stopped and that it's finished. She's been watching Skjalmod's face, and she's so angry with herself. And this is her fault. And when she finally realizes that it's over, she will look at this couple, and their hands tightly clasped. You've done well. Thank you.
They both just like nod, sort of nervously and vigorously. Oi, oi! You can hear this like voice outside that you recognize to be Magni's, just like boisterous and loud, like breaking the tense silence of the place. Oi, oi!
Nucky, will you go? I will sit with Skjalmod till he wakes.
Aye. He'll turn to the couple. Do you have any more meat? That hasn't been boiled.
They nod. It's stored for... Yeah, we do.
Could you bring us some? I'll make sure to replenish the stock and obviously pay you for the trouble. I think you could use some yourselves, don't you?
Yeah. And like the man will stand and the woman with him, and like you'll see that they like won't let go of each other. They'll like walk together out to like where the meat is stored and like begin rolling some barrels. The last remaining 2 this way.
I'll walk out and meet Magni and see how many are with him.
So you can see Magni and Halvar there at least. And of your men, of the 41 that you had brought, there's 28 that you can count, not including Magni. So 30 in total. As they like drag behind them, these prisoners, there's 3 that you can see. They have like ropes tied around their necks and around their hands, and they're being like dragged towards the farm. Of Einar's men, there's no sign. You reckon they must have gone back to Heideborg.
Probably wipe some of the Skjalmod's blood that's no doubt covering Nocky's hands down himself as he wanders up to Magni and gives him a fierce hug, seeing that he's well. Gives Halvar a look and then proceeds to give him a hug after a tense moment, just to keep the boy on his toes.
There's probably a pause before Halvar returns the hug.
Yeah, we fucked them. They're all dead except for these 3. We hung a bunch of them from trees. The rest, we left their heads on the border as a sign. These are not welcome. These Skolfin scum, not welcome in our lands.
Let's hope it's a sign they choose to heed.
How's the Jarl?
We've done what we can for now. It's up to him. From now on.
I think Halvar would interrupt, but he will live. He will live, right? And he can't help but have that desperation in his voice.
Well, only the gods really know the answer. But I have hope.
I don't think Halvar gets permission. He moves past Noki toward the hut that he exited to find the Jarl.
You know, Fenrir bit the hand off Tyr, god of law. And here Skjalmod loses a whole arm. Something poetic about that name.
Something very Skjalmod about that. He always has to go one better.
Magni will like laugh and clap you on the shoulder. I could use a fucking drink.
Funny you should say that. He'll point over to the couple rolling the last meat barrel down. Why don't you earn that drink? Give them a hand. Be nice.
I'm always nice. And he'll like walk in that direction with these like huge footsteps and he'll go, wait. And like you can see the two, like the couple just be like, Jesus, like he's covered head to toe in blood. This like enormous man, but he'll like go over and take one of the barrels and roll it himself. So as you go into the barn to take a quick look at Skjalmod, you might just take a quick break there to exhale and to do some smoky wheeze and whatnot. We'll be back in 5. Okay. Whew, that was grim.
Is this the point where you apologise to anybody watching this while eating breakfast?
Yeah, God. Like all these people who are like not equipped to deal with like that kind of injury, just like trying to figure it out. God, those poor people.
I mean, the 6th level gave me proficiency in wound wise, but there's no way that you just come back from a battle and go, I know how to do this now.
No, I don't think so. And even wound wise, I don't know if that like wound wise is the kind of thing you did, like knowing to pull away the gross flesh and like clean it with burning alcohol and stuff. Like it's not like knowing how to properly take care of a wound like that.
Yeah. Ugh.
I'm just gonna grab a bottle of water before we start again.
Lloyd, that was 10 out of 10 in a gruesome, intense way.
Well, Nico told me how to do it, which is nice because I wouldn't have known. I guess I could have guessed.
I sort of want to ask why Nico knows that, but I'm just gonna plead ignorance.
Just go with it, Taylor. Just go with it. Accept it. Move on.
I mean, it would be my guess. Is that how you fix a wound like that, or like the best attempt you can make without like proper surgery? Like cut away anything that's infected and then just like try and close it up as clean as possible.
I would think the first thing you would do is hit the veins that where blood is. You want to cauterize those quickly.
Yeah.
And then the other flesh so it doesn't
Rot.
putrefy, rot. Yeah. That description though was so good, and Taylor was saying in chat, "Oh my gosh, I'm gagging." I literally was just about to take a drink, and I'm like, "Oh, oh!" The image I had in my mind was so nasty.
What really stuck with me was like the woman like trying to wash her hands and like not being able to do it because it's like such an intense experience, and like I could just like picture her like her hands are shaking under the water and she's like losing it. And it's the same kind of thing where like violence in a battle, I think people are much more able to deal with, but then like gore or like violence outside of a battle, there's like a head switch, you know, in some ways. So I really like the best. I mean, I think like Halvar is so great for this campaign because it allows me to like explore things that
The nitty gritty from the top, from the bottom up.
yes, things that like you take you kind of just like take for granted in the Viking setting that like everyone's fine with killing prisoners or like going to a battle or like all these things that like are just like learned behavior and you become desensitized over like a lifetime of being a warrior. But like when you're new to it, like all that stuff is like so heavy. And I think like it's so good that Halvar like struggles with it all. Okay, so Halvar, you like enter into the barn and you can see like a couple of like children, and you can see Skjalmod like lying on a table, unconscious and pale. There's like blood all over the ground, all around, and like these bloody rags and stuff all over the place. There's like this unpleasant sort of, and yet also strangely pleasant smell in the air. And you can see that like Thorin is like there holding Skjalmod's hand.
I think there's only a moment that he pauses in the doorway to let his eyes adjust to the darkness of the barn. Immediately, his nose is assailed with the smell of hay, cow shit, and burned flesh. When his eyes find his lord, he rushes over and drops down the opposite Thorin. My lord Skjalmod. And he looks, his eyes probably a little red, red rimmed from weariness at Thorin.
Peace, boy. He's not awake yet.
I think his eyes would go back down to Skjalmod's chest and he would see it rise and fall. His shoulders would visibly relax, and he slumps his ass resting across his feet as exhaustion again is starting to overtake him. So he will live, but his arm. And he looks at this ruin that was once where his lord's arm was.
Yes, his arm is gone. We're not blind.
But how will he fight? How will he lead us?
Good. He has his sword arm. He will lead us as he always has. You're a fool if you think he cannot.
I think you would see a pained look cross Halvar's face when you say that. The words cutting deeply. He shakes his head, not realizing he's shaking it. He goes, "I'm no fool. I just worry about our Lord. If you've..." And then he stops. Probably under the steel gaze of this woman.
There's a bit more venom in her voice than maybe you've heard before. And she looks at you still on your knees in the blood. Get up.
He gets up slowly. And probably thankful that his face is still soiled, so you can't see the flushing of his cheeks. He looks down at his feet, and then squares his shoulders and looks at you, Thorin. And he nods his head. That's right. I am a man now. I must act like one.
Well, you at least survived.
He just slowly nods his head. Again, it brings him back thinking of those that had not, some of the young boys that he had joked with just hours before.
And don't think I didn't notice. You did well. Halvar, is it?
Yes, Halvar.
You think quickly.
I did what I must. I saw our Lord fall. I did not think, I just acted.
Even
That's
better, you have good instincts.
He would smile at that and showing his dirty teeth. And maybe a little bit of pride in his voice now. He says, so I helped to save our Lord then.
You did. The Valkyries have not come for him yet. And I suppose that is partly your doing.
Halvar would look back down at Skjalmod and then back at Doran. May I wait with you until may I just wait with you?
No. Go. You'll feel better if you get some meat and you sit with the others.
Yeah.
You've earned it.
At the words, I know that he kind of winces a bit at the rebuke, not knowing if Torin intended it that way, but that's how Halvar takes it. He nods his head and puts his half hand onto Skjalmod's shoulder before he slowly departs.
Outside, Magni is like sitting on an upturned like log, and a couple of the men are like sitting around drinking. And he's like leaning forward, like pinching the bridge of his nose. He's obviously exhausted, but he's trying not to show it as best he can. The three prisoners have been like tied by ropes at their ankles and at their necks and at their hands to like a nearby tree, and they're sitting there silent. He says to you, Naki, two of them can speak. One of them we think might be a Galder, something like that. He doesn't speak our language, but he does speak runes, I think. He's covered in tattoos and he's got strange necklaces. I didn't think it was wise to kill a man of the gods, even if it's one of those Skulfin fucks.
Probably from the best. I could use all the favour the gods give us just now.
Yeah, he might know something. Then he like raises an eyebrow, kind of furrows his brow. He might know how to fix Skjalmod.
It wouldn't hurt to ask.
Small price for his life, I suppose.
Magni, I never had you down as a thinker. Always surprises.
I've been known to dabble here and there.
Well, if your head doesn't hurt with the thinking, you can come with.
He shrugs. They saw me kill a great many of their friends. Maybe they'll be afraid.
Oh, I don't think there's any maybe about it, my friend.
He'll like rise and move with a couple of other men over to where the tree is, where the prisoners are sitting. And he'll like stand with his axe like resting across his shoulder and like look down at them. And he'll look to you.
So let me get it straight. Our language.
Two of them are known to speak your language, yep, but the priest, whoever he is, doesn't.
I'll turn to Magni and ask, has he spoken at all?
He'll shake his head.
So, Magni, which one do you think will scream the loudest out of those two?
Looks between them. One of them's quite burly and big. He's got black hair, a thick black beard, and a shaved head with tattoos. The other is like much more wiry, much more like you would expect an Isgolfin to look, with a sort of like hooked nose. He's got a Valknut tattoo on his neck. Honestly, I'd say the big one.
I think you might be right. But there's only one way to find out.
The smaller man like looks up between you. Maybe I talk. Maybe I know things. And then the man, the priestly man, he says, Eig vet eiki umtheg. In veg, veleki get at hand either. He like rolls it out, this like language you don't understand. Doesn't sound like a spell, thankfully. And the smaller man kind of like chuckles and he said, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to make Uthal angry. The thin man like sniffs and like looks between you two. What is it you want to know? I don't want to die. You muted, Jax. No sound. Okay, I'll pop back across. Skjalmod, can you make me a Constitution saving throw?
I can but try. Oh, 12.
Not quite 13. So you're like having these like insane fever dreams, and it's the same kind of stuff that you were seeing. You're back on the cart, and you're like moving, although there's no like sense of movement. Like you don't feel any bumps or any sort of like path beneath you. You're just like floating along on this stretcher, and there's just like this like numb agony on one side of your body. Like even your face won't move on that side. It's just like this agony. You like look around and you can see that you're going towards a rainbow in the distance. There's nobody carrying this stretcher that you can see. It was great. Yes, that's better. I keep forgetting about that. Yeah, so there's nobody carrying the stretcher that you can see, but you're going towards this like rainbow in the distance. But you can see like the path forks, and on another side, there are dead trees, and it like slopes downwards. And you're not controlling the stretcher. It seems like it's moving of its own volition. And it's kind of like what you see in your fevered dreams.
I'll look about, I guess, and wonder if I dreamed a life while I was dead before. And it warps around as dreams do.
You can see Thorin, that Skjalmod is like moving his head like left and right, and he seems to want to like turn in a certain direction. Like he tries to like even like roll in his sleep, but then like you quickly like put him back onto his back. But he's like rolling, and he's like muttering something in his sleep again, like he was earlier. Just these like words, home, home, as if he's desperate to be home.
Thorin is not good at comforting people. She dabs at his face with one of the slightly bloody cloths that's wet with the water. Sets him back, keeping him from rolling again. And tightens her grip on his hand. Peace, Skjalmod. You will be well again.
Outside under the tree, Halvar, you like approach and see Magni and Chax, and Noki like standing in front of the prisoners, and you can see like the prisoners are like eyeing them up between them. Magni's like looking between them like very threateningly, and he's like sort of like flexing and unflexing his hand on the haft of his axe as they like look up at them. Maybe I could tell you something. You asked me what you want to know.
This man of runes, he has knowledge, healing knowledge.
He turns to the man next to him, to the ruined man, and says something, and the man will nod. He does.
And would he use it on my Jarl?
There's a little bit of translation goes on, and the man like looks up. Hey, Gaith, lagat han Firerverth. And he says you can fix him for a price.
What is the price?
The man like thinks about it. He like reaches or like tries with his hands bound to like reach for like one of the amulets around his neck, and like pulls it up. It's not the right one. He like searches around till eventually he like finds one, like puts it in his mouth, bites down onto it, puts it back down, sniffs the air. Leave me dog thing mini silfree. He says his life and his weight in silver.
His life and his weight in silver.
He
How
says
about his life?
He like looks at the man and like translates, and the man like frowns. Actually, just like sort of like a pantomime frown. Like he's like thinking about it, and then like puts his like finger to his chin, like and then shrugs. Says he's read the runes, and he says that he will die unless he helps.
I think Noki would hear like a snap of a dry branch as Halvar approaches, and having heard the end of that, he would just say, "He lies," and he turns and points back behind him to the barn. He says, "The Jarl is alive. I've seen it myself."
Han fer till helvetis. Han haft the inga vapen. He goes to hell. He had no weapon.
That is a good point. Did he say that straight after Halvar spoke, as if understanding?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't like it. I really don't like it.
He says in his language, "Let me throw the bones, let me read the runes, and I will see what will happen to your Jarl, and then you can make a decision."
Yeah, oh,
Magni sort of shrugs and like looks to you. Could be. The Fenwich can do it. I don't know what kind of magic this man has. But maybe Skjalmod will live anyway.
Halvar would get close to Noki and with a hissed whisper in his ear, he'd say, "Don't trust it, man." And he would look at the man, but he would almost he would take like kind of like a little half step back, probably putting a little bit of Noki between he and himself.
The man like flashes you a smile, and you can see that he's like filed these like horizontal lines into his teeth when he does so.
if he had great magic and could read the bones, he could have seen the outcome of that battle.
Do you think you can trust him?
No. I think a man will say anything to save his life, especially when the offer is put in front of him. No. Magni, I think you're right. I think that one will scream loudest. That one doesn't get a chance to scream at all. And he'll point to the Galder. It basically instructed Magni to bury his axe in his head.
The Galder like smiles wide, his eyes are wide, and he shows you teeth, and like looks up, and then there's a and the axe like buries itself into his head, as Magni like puts a foot onto his shoulder and like with this wet sort of suck like pulls it back out. The Galder like twitches a few times. His eyes are like rolling in the back of his head, and you can see his hands are like twitching, and they're trying to like get at one of the amulets. And he like manages to grasp like a handful of them before he like dies on the ground.
I imagine Noki's kind of looking at the sky, hoping he did the right thing as the blood begins to pool at his feet.
You would know from Roth witnessing that like if you cast the runes, everything that they say must come true, and so there's like always danger in asking for the runes. And so if this man had cast the runes and said Skjalmod will die without his help, and that would have happened. And so maybe that's a good thing, or maybe it's a bad thing. Who knows?
It'll be whatever the gods want it to be.
The other two, like Iskolfin, like look, sort of side eyes towards the dead Galder, and then back up to you. And the one who's been speaking a lot says, "I can talk. You ask me questions."
Later.
He nods. The big man shrugs.
I need a drink.
Magni will like sigh. He'll like wipe the blood from his axe, and then like make your way back towards the like stumps of trees where you can sit with like the other men and like have a few drinks. The like night will pass, and there's like a grim feeling in the place. Skjalmod will like roll many times in his sleep, and occasionally he'll like want to roll onto the side where his arm isn't, and you have to like basically keep constantly watching him so he doesn't do that and do further harm to it. But yeah, throughout the night, there's drinking, though it's not exactly rowdy or bawdy, sort of more somber, and thanks are given, and stories told of the men who have died in the battle. And then dawn comes. And Skjalmod still hangs on.
Dawn finds Thorin still sitting next to Skjalmod. She has a few drops left in a cup that Naki brought her. But she is tired. She has not slept for watching over Skjalmod. Still, he does not wake.
Yeah, it's a grim vigil that you keep. And as you like watch, I guess, as the early dawn comes, Naki will like creep into the barn.
Yeah, he's no doubt came in several times, or a handful of times during the night, without saying a word. Maybe only stood for 30 seconds and left again, but this time he comes in. He'll kick some dry straw in a kind of futile attempt to cover up the now dried thick blood, and pull up a stool and sit next to you, Thorin, although he'll face away from Skjalmod towards the door. And he'll sit there in silence, waiting to see if she'll speak her mind.
How are the men?
As good as can be. They're tired.
Have you ever... Naki. I cannot decide what I did wrong, but I must have done something wrong.
Why? Why must you have done something wrong? This was not your doing.
Nay, but I was sworn to protect him.
You berate yourself unfairly. You know the gods give a damn about your intentions or your sworn oaths. You're a good friend to him, though. And that's more than most men deserve in this wretched life.
has done him little good.
You just don't see it. Listen, his pain is your pain right now. But don't make your pain his. And don't make a greater burden upon yourself than it needs to be. You're stronger than that. Old love doesn't corrode, but punishing yourself could change your friendship for the worse and ruin you. And you're too good of a woman to be brought so low by undeserving guilt.
Its deservedness is perhaps up for questioning, but your advice is sound, all the same.
Yeah. You know the saying, bear is the back of the brotherless man. So it's the back of the sisterless man. Skjalmod is lucky to have you by his side.
Aye, well, he's about to be a lot luckier. I'm not letting him out of my sight for anything.
Yes, lucky man.
Oh, yes. I'm sure he'll think that. He won't be so much as able to take a piss without me close by.
Skjalmod, as you like float on the cart on the stretcher, you're like looking around and there's nobody, and you like look in one direction then the other, and then the Valkyrie is like standing next to you and like walking along beside you, and though like the stretcher like turns and goes over hills and under bridges, every time you like turn in a direction, the Valkyrie is there at your side as you like approach towards the fork in the road.
Oh, croak, so parched. Why don't you fly?
There's like this echo. It's hard to make out what it says, but it's followed by laughter. And the morning turns into noon, and the men are sitting around and they're starting to get restless. They've eaten a lot of food and they've drank a lot of mead, and it's not clear what the plan is now. Will you wait here for Skjalmod to heal, and how long that might take? It's also been like quite a while since anyone was in Skjalvik, and these thoughts kind of like run through all of your minds as you like wait to see what happens here. And still the Iskolfin prisoners wait tied to the tree.
Lucky.
Aye.
It seems some of the men should go back to Skjalvik. But I wonder if Skjalmod would go there or if he would see Godriksson.
You have a flashback to seeing Godriksson in the battle as well, like being stabbed through the stomach and like taking great wounds from that heavily armored warrior.
Yes, I don't know if us showing up on Godriksson's lands right now would do him any good.
He speaks in his sleep. He calls for home.
I think it would do him some good. The men too.
Aye. We have stayed our welcome. I fear any longer, and this family will not be so kind, or at least not be so pleased to see us.
So what will you do?
Thorn will send Magni and most of the men home. And if Skjalmod seems well enough to be carried again, go with them. But she'd get anyone who has any sort of inkling towards medicine to help decide that. She's a warrior. She knows so little of this.
Yeah, doctors are few and far between in this part of the world. And like even the veteran warriors like don't have much idea beyond like try and keep it clean, pour some boiling alcohol on it every now and then. And you've been doing that, like you've been changing the bandages or like the cloth basically a few times per day and like pouring more hot or boiled alcohol on it to try and keep it clean. And like it's hot to the touch and it's like swollen. But that can be expected, I suppose. Or can it? Like nobody has any idea if that's a good sign or a bad sign.
I think Halvar, as the next morning, the next day grows late, he would be pacing outside of the barn before he can wait no longer. He would make his way in, whether he's wanted or not. He would frown as he looks at Skjalmod, and then looks to Toran. Why is he not awake? Why is he no better?
You think I know?
You should. And he moves closer.
I should, eh? Say that to me one more time, boy.
His lower lip starts to shake a bit, and you would guess, Torin, that it looks as though he is just about to say it one more time and then thinks better of it. He moves over and he looks at the wound himself and he feels it, and he frowns. He clicks his tongue. This is not good. When I was younger, growing up in the village, I would tend our goat. It caught itself on a branch one time and tore open its stomach. We did our best. The wound felt like this. And he looks at you, Torin. We have to do something.
If you have training in wound wise, Halvar, you can give me a roll.
Yeah, I do, actually. Nat 20. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so you think that like it's hot and it's swollen, and you think that if you probably have to drain it, like there's goo in there, and it's like building up, and you think that like it would relieve a lot of pain and a lot of pressure if you like drain the wound.
Yeah. So he says what his words trail off, and Torin doesn't say anything. You see him reach. He pulls out this, what was it, a flint, this dagger of flint that he had taken from a man he killed in the last, not the last battle, but the battle in Skjalvig. And you see him go to the Jarl. He presses at the wound until he finds...
What are you doing?
And he looks at you and he says, he tries to pull his hand free, but you're strong. And then he stops. He says, the wound, I must cut it there. It must drain or he will die. And he looks pleading at you. Trust me.
Do it.
He nods, and he feels at the wound till he finds that soft area he's looking for, and he pulls the knife slowly across it.
Yeah, immediately there's like this trail of like goo and pus that like falls from the wound. You can like press down. It's like pushed out of the wound, and you see like immediately it's like a lot less swollen. And Skjalmod like rumbles and then just like pukes up onto his chest. You have to like roll him onto his side real quick so that you can like puke up whatever disgusting misery is inside his stomach because he hasn't eaten in a long time and hasn't drank either. You like roll him back over. And like the wound continues to like drain, and you like leave it there for a while before like cleaning it once again and like stitching it back up. You'll likely have to do that every day.
Yeah, and I think that's what Halfa would say. I must tend to this wound every day. Is probably the last thing that he would say.
And will you send the warriors away, Thorin, to Skjalvik, or will you wait until Skjalmod is healed to go all together?
I'll send them with Magni. They're restless. They should go home to eat and drink.
Okay, so you send Magni and the bulk of the warriors and the prisoners back towards Skjalvik, and you leave a couple of them with you. They head off. Another like day will pass with the same sort of grim business of like draining the wound and cleaning it and like trying to make Skjalmod eat and drink, though he like struggles with that. Until another 2 days later, finally, Skjalmod's eyes will like flutter open ever so barely for a moment. The path that you've been on, Skjalmod, on the stretcher, this like final like moment you're walking now rather than on the stretcher and still like gripping your arm tightly, is the Valkyrie always there. You like get to the fork and you can see like one direction leads to a rainbow, the other like broken trees and dead land, and you're like faced with this decision before you.
Like turn to the Valkyrie, like face of confusion.
She like looks at you and like turns her
Where are
head
you
to the
taking
side.
me?
That's for you to decide.
Valhall, he says in like almost a tone of recoil in his voice, rather than whatever that is, like Muspelheim or Nilfheim or some hell.
And there are 2 roads before you, but also one behind you. There's rest ahead, a battle in your future, the final battle that we all must fight in, there to the rainbow. But
Why are
behind
you
you,
showing me hell and heaven before me? And you'd know my choice, Valkyrie.
behind you, there is a path also. And there are battles there. It is not certain into which path you will go. You can choose now, Valhall. But that path, and she like points down, and you can like hear the crowing of a great many like birds and like the skittering of insects. That also is a path that could lie before you if you go back.
Hell has had people forever, and Valhall's halls are stacked. Ragnarok rock is already written, but my people need me. Guide me no longer. I will go back. And of my own, he'll say and like push the stretcher back, and doesn't even realize that he's doing it with two hands.
Yeah, Thorin, you would see like Skjalmod, as you're like holding his hand, he would like basically like start moving his arm as if to like let go. Um, though he's still like his eyes are still closed. He'll like start to like try and let go of your hand.
She releases it, watching, brow furrowed.
And you can like turn Skjalmod and begin walking back. And behind you, you can like hear the sound of the birds and the insects, and also like the strange sort of like choir of the rainbow. You like turn your back on both of those things and move back downwards, and you can see the whole scope of the world beneath you, Midgard like laid out. You've like been going up seemingly for a very very long time. You can see there all the mountains, all the oceans like laid out, and as you like begin to like walk down, the speed begins to like pick up, and you begin to like fall, and then with like this disgusting pain, you like sit up, all right, and like vomit this like blackish blood all over yourself. And there's like agony in your arm, or what used to be your arm, and you can like see around you all these people who are like looking concerned, but you are in a barn.
He'll raise his arm, please, and try and stand. Water.
A cup is already being pushed into your hand. Sit still, Skjalmod. You've been asleep for days.
His eyes are bleary, and like through the roomy slits, he kind of looks about and like guzzles the horn of water, like coughing and spluttering before trying to drink some more, and head swimming kind of cocks his neck back. Noki. He's here too. Halvar, Magni, and the men, and he starts looking around, like lots of thoughts coming back to him, but not in like an organized fashion, like just in a barrage of like things left undone. That makes his head swim all the quicker.
Magni has taken the men back to Skjalvik.
And Godriksson.
I do not know, Jarl.
Send a man to him, and Thorvald and those outlaws from the hills.
Jarl. Thorn is stunned. She has not thought of any of these people.
Must send a rider to them too. We need to find them before someone else does. And the fjord, if we won, we should hold it so no more of them can pour into. I know. And then he probably goes to vomiting again. Too much thoughts and like water and sensations and everything. He's useless again.
Yeah, but the orders are carried out quickly and given, and people start going in different directions. Some headed north towards the outlaws. A runner sent.
Noki, you should go with them. You have rapport with their people. Send Halvar to Godriksson. He knows his men well.
Yeah, it's done. The orders are given. Skjalmod will like feel ill again. And so some men will head off with you, Noki, towards the outlaws and Torvald. While you, Halvar, will head towards Godriksson's castle, hopes of like figuring out what's happened there. And what will you do yourself, Skjalmod? Do you want to go to Skjalvik?
Just like rest here with these people until we're well enough to ride, and then take what men we can to Godriksson's hold, as that's the closest, and with the intention of going on to the fjord. Maybe when I get to Godriksson's land, I can send Thorin and some troops to fortify the fjord and like kind of hold that. I see that as a strategic thing. I want to lock the Thorvel and his men in, but I think Noki might be better at finding them than myself, and I want to see to Godriksson and cement that alliance and sort out the aftermath of that battle. But I thought it would be best to send fair enough, Sailor. Thought it might be best to send Halvar there first. He'd probably right to go now and need something to do rather than pacing and worrying. And then we'll go on when we can actually ride and go properly.
Okay.
And then try and link up with Noki when we leave Godriksson's land, heading towards the fjord, because that's closer to where I imagine Thorveld would be coming from, if Thorveld's coming from the mountains. Cool. And that's my plan.
So everyone like starts moving in different directions. Halvar, you're given a horse, and you can like ride towards Godriksson's land. It'll take you maybe half a day, a little bit longer maybe, on horseback to get there. And Noki, similar sort of distance for you in a different direction, towards Torvald and his men. And in the meantime, Skjalmod will like rest and try and gain his strength back, like eat the delicious food here. Although Sven will like provide you with like plain bread and like very simple things to eat, so that you can like try and keep them down. Your stomach is like delicate, understandably. And every day still, Halvar would have shown you, Thorin, how to drain the wound, and that continues to happen every day. And it's pretty agonizing. Not unexpectedly, having lost the arm, and you're still sort of feverish, and you're going in and out of dreams and stuff a lot, Skjalmod. But Halvar, you'll arrive at Godriksson Castle about a day later, and you'll be let in and welcomed by Grim and some of the other men who are like sitting around in the courtyard, and he'll like pour you a cup of ale and like get you to sit.
Yeah, I think Halvar would do that. He would smile warmly at the big man, sit down, and he doesn't say anything until he takes that first sip. After he swallows, he wipes his lips with the back of his hand. How fares your lord?
He lives. And he says that with like a lack of confidence. He took a lot of wounds. We don't know. How fares Skjalmod?
The same. He lives.
Yeah, the gods have some mercy.
He says he's a strong man. Do not know much, but I could look at your lord if you wanted. I used to tend, and he would just go on and say how he used to tend the livestock in the small swamp village that he grew up in.
Yeah, he'd nod. He'd bring you into the castle itself, and like in a waiting room, you'd meet Gothild, who's the elder daughter of Godriksson. And she's like tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, like mid-30s, and she like comes right up to you and like puts a hand on your shoulder. I know it's not proper that we talk like this, but I don't think that the others would tell me if there was any truth to the matter. We hear things about the swamp, that there's a witch there that can heal the sick, who can stop men dying. Is that true?
I think she would see fear in Halvar's eyes when she says that. But he slowly nods his head and whispers, "It is true.
She can stop men from dying?"
And he locks his eyes with hers. But there's always a price. And that price It's not always easily paid.
Oh, we have silver, gold even.
Halvar looks torn. I was told your lord father was well enough that he would live.
She like tries to keep it together. That you can tell that she's struggling. Like her lip wobbles a little bit. He's strong, I know that, but the wounds are grievous.
I told your man that I have some skill in this. I could look at your father. I was able to tend to my own lord, and he is better for it. And you would try to smile reassuringly, but he probably does little to sway her.
Okay. If you can't, you'll bring me to this witch.
Halvar's mind is racing. He finds himself in a position that he's never been in before. Before he knows it, he's nodding. But first, your father. Let me see him.
She like leads you into the room. It's like this great sort of bedroom. Up on like a platform is the bed itself. And like the windows are like half open, but it's like musty and smelly in here. The smell of like wounds. And you can see like Godric is like propped up on some pillows, but that he's like wrapped up in bandages in two places particular. He's been stabbed in the stomach, it looks like, or like in the midsection. And like there's a bad smell from that wound in particular. The second is like a thick sort of slice into his right shoulder. But that one seems to be mostly under control. His eyes are closed and he's like breathing sort of faintly.
Yeah, I think his nose rankles at the smell. With his right hand, he puts it across the Jarl's forehead, moves it down to his chest. He feels the clammy skin, and he frowns. I imagine the daughter followed him in here. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm just going to guess that it's not good, and this is Lionel, not Halvar, that he's probably going to die from the gut wound.
So, like I don't know enough about gut wounds to be sure, but I think
if it pierced his intestine and whatever, he definitely would die from that.
Right. So I think that in Iskloft, like this is the kind of wound that almost certainly, like 9 times out of 10, will kill someone. You know.
I think Halvar would look to one of the servants in here and say, "Quickly, fetch cold, clean water and rags." And he would wait till the servant leaves, maybe leaving him alone with the Jarl's daughter.
Yeah.
And he would stand and he would wipe his hand on his tunic and shake his head. "Do not think your father will live."
She like lets out this like shuddering sort of sigh, like she knew that, but now it's confirmed. And you can see like a tear rolls down her cheek. We have to go to the witch.
Halvar takes a step towards her and he puts each of his hands on her shoulders. And he squeezes not roughly, but more in comfort. I would caution you against that. You do not know. I have never met the witch myself. But the price she asks is not coin. Do you think, and he looks back over his shoulder at her father, Do you think your father would want this?
You can see that question like sort of stumps her because I mean you get the impression, having met Godriksson like once or twice, that he absolutely would not, you know. But then again, like a daughter like seeing her father like about to die, so she kind of like thinks about it and shakes her head. No, but I do.
And what are you willing to pay?
Anything. He would do it for me.
And that kind of cuts Halvar, because he has never known his father. Parents' love for their child, they would do almost anything.
Yeah. I don't know what to do.
I can make your father comfortable. Ease his passing. But again, he turns to her and a pleading look on his face. Don't do this. It's not natural. It's not right. We live, we die. That is how it is.
I'm not ready to be the Jarl here. I can't do it. I don't know.
He kind of stammers over his words.
And this is unusual. Like she, you know, like her job generally is to be like very in control and very like sort of perfect and prim and proper. But like obviously she's like so emotional and she doesn't know you, you know, but she's just like pouring forth this like truth.
Halvar kind of stammers a response. My lord, he has not had all his strength return yet, but he does off in one of your smaller farmsteads. He intends to come here. He is both wise and just. He will be able to give you the strength that you need. Your father, he and I think he lies here. Your father will not die before then.
She looks at you.
And I can roll a deception if you'd like, Lloyd.
No, that's okay.
Well. Yeah.
She like looks between you and her father and like goes to his side and like takes his hand, though he doesn't seem to notice. She's just like shaking her head sadly, like doesn't know what to do. She's like lost.
And I think Halvar, not knowing what to do himself, he would come up and he would put a comforting arm around her and not say anything. Stand there silently until I guess the servant arrives, and then he would just take the water from them. Start to, much like Torin did to Skjalmod, he would wipe at the Jarl's forehead and set about cleaning out the wound and rebinding it as best he can, but he knows it'll do nothing.
Yeah, so it seems you work away trying to make this man as comfortable as you can. As you like look, the wound is it looks like it might be fatal. You think unless the witch is involved or the gods are involved, that this man will die. Naki, you're like riding through the ford and out the other side, and it's like a little bit of time later before you like encounter the first sort of like whistle rather of some of these bandits, and like Torvald will arrive. It's like scratching at his beard as he like approaches. We're just about to leave.
And where do you plan to go?
Across the river. See what the mood takes us, you know? He's got this like grin on his face. Heard there was a big scrap.
Oh, one for the ages. You should have been there.
You know, maybe I should have. Part of me is glad I'm not, or I wasn't.
A very small part, though, surely.
He does this thing where he like scratches at his left shoulder and says, "Not so small."
Shame.
All the lords are dead, all three of them.
No, you've heard wrong.
Really? They say
Skjalmod
Godriksson
sent
they say that Godriksson got stabbed in the guts. He's dead. Skjalmod lost an arm. He's fucking dead. And Rannick, they say some pup ran him down with a spear. He's fucking dead.
You know how rumours are. Godriksson is injured. This is true. How badly, I do not know. Skjalmod, though, he's alive. Lost an arm. This is true. But he lives. I told you, he's a strong man. As for Rannick, I wasn't a pup that ran him through. Good bloody warrior. Skjalmod's.
You know, it's funny that we were sitting around yesterday and we were talking about Skjalmod. He got this reputation for law, you know? And you can see like this joke coming before it comes because Magni had made the same joke. And obviously like everyone thinks they're very clever thinking of it. And he like says, you know, Tyr lost a hand. And Tyr's the god of law. Skjalmod loses a full arm.
That's Skjalmod. He always has to go one better.
They all like lose it at the rehearse line. And like he claps you on the shoulder. That's fucking good. Oh yeah. So he's still alive.
Still alive.
And the Skulfin is dead. And that offer still stands to go to Skjalmod and live decent lives.
That's why I'm here. Sitting here, personally. By the Jarl himself.
Thinking about it, is he? First thing out of his mouth when he woke up, no doubt.
You should be honoured by that.
Just seems unlikely. He scratches at his beard again. Scratches at one of the scars on his face.
That's just because you don't know the man well enough.
Yeah. Well, some of us want to go anyway. And you've put up with our bullshit and our ribbing for the last while, and you haven't lost your temper, so I think overall, okay. Now, some of the boys are staying here. Some of the boys are, well, they don't fit in the world. They can only do one thing, and it's this. Some of us, yeah, we're keen. So if you'll have us, there's 14 of us.
I'll welcome you with open arms myself. I'll hug every one of you and kiss you on each cheek. I don't expect Skjalmod to do the same, though, but he'll welcome you.
No, don't suppose he's much for hugging now. All right, Nuggy. Let's go. And he'll like do this like loud whistle, and a bunch of the men who have been like standing around will like come out. It's just like seemingly natural to them to like all hide just in case. And they'll like come out from various behind trees and stuff like that. And many of them have like horses or like donkeys and things, pack animals with their possessions and whatnot. And they'll follow you back towards the farm. So in the day or two since rather, Skjalmod, you're starting to feel a little bit more human, a little bit more active. You've been able to like stand and like walk to the wall of the barn and back before you were like too dizzy and fell over again. You've been like living on this like diet of water and bread, just like nothing that will upset your stomach at all. But it's working. Seemingly, you're starting to feel a bit better day by day. Is there anything like you and Thorin would like to chat about in the meantime before the boys come back?
I think Skjalmod, when he's good enough to walk and like hold a sentence together, maybe like on a walk where he's trying to regain his strength, he'll walk with Thorin and say, "Thank you for saving me, for taking me this far from the battlefield. I would not be alive without you. I know you are tired and exhausted, but there's still yet so much more to do that I have to ask from you. Forgive me that I will, and accept my thanks."
Skjalmod, how could I have anything to forgive you for?
To follow me from here may cost you, he says, like wincing at the phantom hand.
I will give whatever it takes. But I'm not letting you out of my sight.
Then you'll have to get the horses ready. We'll have to ride for Heideborg, and I'll put my good hand up to stifle any like protestations of that. I'm good enough to ride.
Yes, you are getting a bit restless, it seems. You've walked 30 whole steps today.
Let the horse do the stepping. I must do the thinking. And then he like starts to cough a bit, like spit, like turns away to walk away and spit out some whatever filth is still like afflicting him, and then make his way back, like take at the water bladder, and then say, "But there's something I have to do first." He'll make his way to the family, and he'll take his shield, I assume recovered from the battle, maybe he's carried on it, and present that to the family. As well as like some extra hack like silver or bronze, or like a minor talk, or maybe like ring or fetish from the swamp folk. And say that I'll never forget the kindness that family showed myself and my men, and for their help in saving my life. But I must leave, and I'm sure they'll be thankful for that, so that all of us grim warriors are well away from them and their children. But I would want to speak to them first and say that, and then borrow the pig farmer's axe and go over to the tree where the two Iskolfin are roped up.
Yeah, they'll like almost protest the family at the generosity, like even though it's definitely needed because they've like given you so much stuff, it's still like polite for them to say, "Oh, we couldn't possibly accept all this stuff," and for you to say, "Oh, you simply must accept all this stuff." But they're like genuinely grateful, like it's a pleasant sort of parting. The two Iskolfin are like have been like kept alive just barely with like enough food and water to keep them going, but they're both like look exhausted from like being sat at this tree for several days, nearly a week.
I'll tell one of the men to go and bring them like some food and water, or maybe like give them my own water skin, not untie them, of course, but like give them a mouthful of food and like quench their thirst.
They'll eat and drink gratefully.
Across the river, is Rannick's castle. What was Rannick's castle? Who now would rule there, and with how many men?
They look
And I'll
between
look
each other.
between the two of the men.
Yeah, they look between each other for a moment, and it's the thin man who speaks. It's hard to say. Most of the big men were at the battle. He's like racking his brain. He seems to be genuinely thinking about it. Fuck you. That's who would be in charge.
I'm going to test how much strength I've got back, and with whatever feeble might I can, hack at this man like pork for whatever minutes it takes me till he's dead.
Yeah, he like raises a hand at first to like block, and it slices through the hand and into his face, and it's only a couple more before he's gurgling and dead.
I'll turn to the other man. I can put a blade in your hand and end you with honor.
Orm. It would be Orm.
How many?
Hard to say. Always more ships. When we left, maybe 30, maybe 40. Could be more now.
A lot less. Do you have any last words?
He like thinks about it. No.
You and your men fought bravely and doled us much slaughter. My arm belongs to you, Rannick's wolves. And he'll place his axe in the man's bound hands and nod to Thorin and walk away, lead her to her butchery.
You fought well also, he'll call after you. And he'll like grip the axe as tightly as he can.
And then mount up and ride agonizingly as fast as he can without swooning to Heideborg.
Okay, let's take a quick break there and then continue playing for 100 years.
I mean, I'm in.
I'll be back in like 5. Righto, I'm back.
I can keep playing for 100 years. That sounds good to me. I need sleep.
Yeah. I've got probably like 2 solid hours to go of content. But I can just generate it en masse in this game because I don't know. It's so sandboxy that it's just, yeah, it just happens.
This is why we have Nico play the Jarl, though. Because I'm over here just enjoying all the good buttery popcorn goodness, and he's silently planning so that when he wakes up, he's like, oh, we got to do this and this and this. I'm like, oh,
Right. That's
oh
like
shit,
what
I forgot all about that.
kind of like what Donica does in the vampire game too, you know? He's like, here's what we're doing. Here's what I'm doing. I have all these ideas and stuff. And it's like, that's what I was talking about the other day with like the what kind of player are you post, you know?
Yeah.
It's and Nico's the same as me, very much a get shit done player. Like, here's the plan. I'm always thinking about what the next thing is, you know?
Yeah.
But again, like if it was just 5 people like that, I don't know. Like, would there be any challenge? You know, everyone's so focused on the mission.
Yeah. Very, very strategically minded.
Yeah.
And I just can't play those characters because my brain doesn't work that way.
I guess it's like really task minded, you know, like always thinking about like what are we doing as opposed to like what are we feeling and what are we thinking. It's like what are we doing? What's the activity all the time, you know?
Yeah, I wonder. I would be really interested, like, you know, those ENFJ, ENTP, whatever stuff. It's like, if you're the thinker, are you the strategist in a game? Like, are you the one who's always saying, okay, this is what we've done so far, and this is what else needs to get done, and this is who we need to talk to next? And like,
when I did that theater course, we did a thing where
yeah,
it's like you end up being sorted into a thing or whatever. And I was an activist, which is like somebody who's always like just wants to do the thing, doesn't want to talk about it. Let's just try it and do it, you know. And the others were like the thinker, the discusser, the planner. I think all these like different things. But I was the one that's just like, let's just do the thing. Let's just fucking go for it.
I'm gonna feel all the feels. I'll probably still do the thing, but I'm gonna feel all the feels first.
The debater. I don't know. I would say that you're a doer.
He's a wordsmith, that's for sure. By the way, Lloyd, what were you using for the Iskolfin language? Because that was excellent.
It's Icelandic.
Sounded like magic.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it was great.
Really beautiful.
I think at this stage I've done enough that I can like read it phonetically. I don't like, so I just like went to Google Translate, put in what I wanted to say, and then like read it like as I understand phonetically Icelandic. Probably wrong all over the place, but it sounded legit, you know?
It was great, like slightly rough, but still really pretty.
It's like not a particularly guttural language at all. Doesn't sound like German or anything, you know?
No, it's really unique. And parts of it reminded me almost of the sound of Latin and some of the Romance languages, just the way it flowed. It was really lovely.
Well,
I liked
lots
it a
of
lot.
like soft TH noises and stuff in it, you know? Which you don't get too much of in English.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a book one time that I read about a girl coming from Mexico and listening to people speaking English, said it sounded like they had sticks in their mouths.
Yeah,
because
that makes
it's
sense.
very clipped, and there are a lot of much harder sounds in English than there are in other languages. I can hear the wheels turning.
Who waiting on Lionel?
Now I'm back.
What timing? Okay, so Skjalmod, you like ride towards Heideborg with Thorin and the rest of the men in tow. And along the way, about halfway there, you'll encounter Nocky and his band of outlaws who are behind him. Many of them are like walking or like bringing carts and things like that. Like they're transporting their lives basically from the woods to wherever the hell you're going. But yeah, that's what you would see on the way. Do you want to take them with you or tell them to go to the fens, or what do you think?
They'll come with us. They'll come with us to Godriksson. Oh, I should know.
Thorn would counsel against that.
Yeah, I just don't want to be there with nothing. Or be there with few numbers. But yeah, I think you're right. Well, we've offered you land and food around Skjalvik, and so you can go and do so. You'll know of Magni and Skander there. And these men will escort you and several of our retinue, so that it's just myself, Nocky, Thorin, and like a few others. We'll go on to Godriksson's hold at Heideborg.
Okay.
We'll spare some to guide Thorvald and his men to Skjalvik along the Fenway, and then to get them sorted out, integrating into Skjalvik. I'll just rely on Skander and what was I always forget his name, Logar, the old guy with one eye who you brought. Logear, yep. I rely on Logear. He seems really solid for now, because I want to get to Godriksson. If what they say is true, that these Thorvald's men say that he's dead, it doesn't bode well. Like that's, I guess, the first time we hear about Godriksson, and it would be from that man saying that Godriksson's dead. So I would be riding with haste to Heideborg, thinking that Godriksson's dead, and I'd be going through my head like, which daughter will it be? Who will be on hand? Who will be supported? How many will be there? Like, where are their men after the battle? Mm-hmm. And like, fuck.
So you can ride as fast as you can.
Skjalmod would be good at juggling it all, but I'm like, I don't know. I'm not thinking of all the things I should be thinking of.
You can ride towards Heideborg, just a few of you. And again, like Halvar, you'd be like welcomed in graciously. I guess you'd find Halvar in the courtyard, like sitting with some of the men. There's a grim mood upon the place. And you would see Halvar, who I guess would like beckon you over and explain the situation, that Godric had been gut stabbed basically. It doesn't look good. I don't know if he would like, I don't know, actually it's up to you, Halvar. Would you mention the stuff about the witch or whatnot? But
that is a really good question. Well, I guess it would be depend on how was the other information received by Skjalmod.
I would like relax visibly and thank the gods when I hear that he's not dead.
Yeah, but when Skjalmod says that, Halvar would shake his head and say that he's not long before. I would imagine that these last few days, we've given him his sword and put it in his hand, not knowing when he might pass. And Halvar would say, even though he has little strength, he seems to grip his sword tightly. I think he knows.
I'll nod at that. Is there somewhere we can clean ourselves before seeing him? Tell me, where are his daughters?
He would nod and maybe call. I guess being there for a few days, he would know. He would call to a boy.
Yeah, they would bring you into like gas chambers and stuff where you can like wash and all the rest. Probably like for the first time since the battle.
Yep.
Wash away the not only like the wounds and whatnot, but also like the filth of like nearly 2 weeks with no shower or no bath.
The best and worst bath of Skjalmod's life.
Yeah. Yep, I imagine there's a lot of pain in putting like a relatively fresh wound into boiling hot water, but on the other side, it probably feels amazing. Get clean and like been given clean clothes and stuff like that, and then can like meet in one of the like welcoming chambers with like a big stone wooden table. You can meet Guthild, who's the older daughter, and like a couple of the sterner, like not sterner, like more veteran guards, Grim among them. We're like sitting at one end and they'll like welcome you in and like encourage you to like sit and eat.
Thank you for having us, lady. We accept your hospitality. I wish to see my friend Einar as soon as I may.
Of course, you're more than welcome, she says, clearly distracted. Yes, I can take you now. And she like stands and like gives you a look over, like you should come as well. You've been like obviously seeing to him for the last few days, and like although he's not like you're not healing him, he's like better than he was before you got here.
Yeah, I'll take Thorin with me. Nocky, I'll give you a look and lean in close and whisper, just be eyes and ears about this place and the castle and see what we may have missed while gone. I'll be with the Lord. I'll see you later on. But he would say that's in a whisper that only Nocky would hear.
Yeah. So you can go in and see Einar. He's in, obviously bad shape. He's like propped up on pillows and he's pale, currently asleep, like his skin is clammy. And there's, as I described earlier, like still that smell. Probably one you're not too unfamiliar with of like an infected wound.
I'll go and look upon him and see if he's lucid or not.
Not currently. However, you would know that there's ways to like dull the pain for him that would like bring him back to consciousness, but like it probably won't help his condition long term.
When Skjalmod approaches him, he would kind of walk up alongside him, look down at the Jarl and say, I could rouse him if you'd like, Lord. Mixture of some herbs. But I warn you, to do so will only speed the end.
Does Gothild hear this? And if so, how does she react?
I think Helvar would say it fairly quietly, but I don't know how close she is.
Like if you want to whisper it, you can whisper it, you know, that's fine.
Yeah, he would totally whisper it.
She would be at his side, like holding his hand.
Do you think he'll rouse again, or is in the final sleep?
He would shake he's already shaking his head as you're asking the question. There is one thing.
Speak.
He would lean in really close, so his lips are almost brushing your ear. The girl hoped to use the witch. I talked her out of it.
He gives an approving nod, and we'll move over next to Gothild.
She's like speaking quietly to him, though he doesn't seem to be responding. Like, Skjalmod is here. Your friend Skjalmod.
I hope that he can hear us, lady, but I do not think we will rouse him. He's for Valhall.
She like swallows and nods slowly.
He was a bear amongst wolves at the fjord, Rannick's bane, and bright mail and glory. The apex of his lineage to make his ancestors proud. It's why he sleeps so peacefully.
Yes. I know that's proper, but I wish he would wake up.
As do I. If you'll allow it, I'll stand vigil with him as well.
Of course, you're friends.
For a moment.
when it
but I'll
counted
not
most.
forget. I know. When his people needed him, he stood. You're all proud for it.
That was his way.
It's a good way.
She nods and holds his hand.
And Skjalmod will do a difficult thing and wait for the days to come.
Nucky, as you're like kind of like walking through the castle and the courtyards and stuff like that, can you give me an insight check?
Certainly. Sorry, I was ill prepared to roll dice.
Yeah, that's fair. Did you say a number? I didn't catch it. Sorry.
Sorry, I think my hangout's 7.
Still didn't get it. One more time.
Me too.
Seven. Okay. Yeah. So you're walking around. There is kind of a strange atmosphere. Like it's tense, and like you get a sense of like tenseness beyond just the fact that it's a Jarl potentially dying. There's like something else lingering, like stern gazes across courtyards and things like that. Hushed groups like talking, although what it means is not clear.
Unman in this place that I've at least had fond interactions with, and that's Grim. Seek him out at some point. I think Noki would do so.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd find them, as always, like in the courtyard, like watching men fighting and like pointing out like holes in their techniques and things like that. He'd be like leaning on one of the tables, like watching, sitting, and he'd like look up as you approach and offer a place for you to sit.
Oh. Not done much sitting these past few days. How are you?
It's been better. Trying to keep the boys busy.
Is there a reason you're keeping them busy?
It's a hard time with the Jarl on his deathbed. No one really to replace him. You know what I mean? Men might get thoughts. I love that girl. I've known her a long time, and she's good. She's nice, and that's a problem. She's too honest, wears her heart in her sleeve, and I don't know if everybody thinks that she can do what needs to be done. So I'm keeping the boys busy so they don't think about it.
Think of her that when it comes the time, she won't be her father.
she's been trained and she knows how to rule, but I don't know if she knows how to. There's more to it than knowing what the right answer is. It's about reputation, and it's about throwing your weight around and making it known you're not to be fucked with. And there's all this stuff too. Many men don't want to follow a woman.
No, it's good you keep them busy. Keep such thoughts from their heads.
Hmm. Well, I'll keep keeping them busy. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Halvar, I'm sure.
You broke up their checks. I didn't catch that bit. Something about Halvar.
Basically, Halvar owes him a drink.
Yeah. I think you said Halvar owes him a drink. Do you mean him or you? Sorry, it's just breaking up a lot and I can't really follow.
Yeah, I think I heard that Halvar owes Noki a drink.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Grim would like nod at that. He owes me more than one, I think. He made it through that battle, and I think in no small part because of the stuff I showed him. He's a good kid, though, I think. Means well. And I think he's making the Jarl as comfortable as he can. And a day will pass. And Godriksson like seems less and less well. He's like more pale, more exhausted. His breathing is like more shallow. And so the question will arise, basically Skjalmod and Halvar, like, do you want to try and rouse him before he goes, or do you want him to go without any like final?
I'll ask Gothild what she would have and do that, I think. But before I ask her that, I want to ask her where her other sister is, or was there just the one?
There is another sister, yeah. She's younger.
How come she's not here?
Oh, in the room, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, she would have been visiting, sorry, here and there, but
Okay,
like,
cool.
but Gothild would be here like literally all the time.
Yeah.
Sister would like coming and going, and like
She's the elder and gets shit done.
Gothild
Like
is the older one.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, well, I'd say that my man here, he can rouse your Lord Father if you wish to hear his final words, though it may pain him after and disturb his sleep. We can let him drift and fade away, but unfortunately, there's nothing more that I can offer with what we have with us.
Yeah, she would like nod. Her eyes are like red and swollen from like crying. She says he would want a last chance to say something, and I want to say goodbye. And she'd give you a look, Halvar.
I think Halvar would grimly nod. I think he would set about getting some of the herbs that he would need, and what he does is he crushes them all in this small bowl with like a mortar pestle, and then he puts like this oil. He would just ask for like a pitch or an oil that they have. He would just put a little bit in there, and he would burn it, and he would set it underneath the Jarl's head, and closing his mouth so that he has to draw it in through his nose.
Yeah, a couple of breaths will go by until like he'll like start. His eyes will open wide. Oh, Father. And he'll like look around the room.
Halvar would immediately move back, giving way to the others.
Yeah, Skjalmod will move back from Gothild and Einar as well at that.
Yeah, the younger daughter, who's maybe 14, Svanhild, is also here now, and a couple of other like very trusted people. The two daughters are like crouched down by his side, like each holding one of his hands. And he like looks down at the state of himself and around the room and all the people, and he like starts to figure it out. Oh, I see. I saw a rainbow bridge. I'm not gone yet. Oh, you're living. And no arm. He like goes to laugh at that as if it's hilarious, but then like
Rennick took it from me.
we took it all from him though, eh?
Every single one, I'll confirm for him.
Good.
The fjord at the like hillfoot is safe. And your men are all here.
Yes. Good. Oh. Yeah, it doesn't hurt so bad now. I remember it hurting so much. You don't need to cry. He like squeezes the hands. We'll all go someday. And I'll see you there someday. And they like come close to him and they're like speaking quietly to him.
I think Skjalmod will like turn to his people and maybe like after a moment go to withdraw from the room to give them privacy. Actually, maybe getting Halvar to stay in case he's needed with his knowledge.
Yeah. There are like these moments that like
But
pass.
I feel a bit weird.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. And so like most of the people retreat from the room and this is like private moment and you, Halvar, are like there for it. Like standing at the back of the room just in case you're needed. And they're like talking. And you can hear him say, "Who will? Are you ready? Can you do it?" And Gothild's like, I don't think so. I'm afraid. And he like nods slowly. That's the man I told you about. Not so handsome, but good. And she like sort of laughs and cries at the same time. I think he is good. He tried to get the sword all the way up the fucking mountain. And she like nods, and the younger sister is just like inconsolable. She's just like weeping and like screaming and like holding the hand. I think you should do it. And then there's like something that passes between them, like quietly, Halvar, and you can just hear like the Svanhild like yelling, and then she's like punching at the bed, and you can see like his breathing like is slowing. Don't go after the sword. Let the old things die. I'll see you, and when you come to Valhall, I'll pull out the chair for you, both of you. And then there's like a couple more moments, and he stops breathing. And Halvar, you're like stuck in this room, sort of awkwardly, as like the two daughters like weep, and the Jarl of Heideborg dies from his wounds. The sword like tied around his wrist and into his hand, so he can't let go of it. You like stand there for a while. Like minutes will pass until finally, like Guthild will like rise and like wipe her tears away. And you'll see her like stand and like try and like adjust her clothes and like wipe the tears, and she'll like move around to Svanhild and give her like a hug and encourage her to like go somewhere else before like opening the doors and letting the servants in to like begin the process of like moving the body and things like that. And a couple of hours will pass before like the rest of you are informed that he's like passed. Guthild will like find you in one of the rooms and like sit down. It's clear that he's gone. Eirik is dead. And he had a sword in his hand, and so he'll go to the corpse hole. At least that was made clear.
I grieve for you, lady. I grieve with you. A great man, lost to all. But I'm glad to hear his last moments were fitting amongst kin, and with his blade fresh in hand with the enemy. Tell me if there is anything I can do for you, and I'll see it done.
She like reaches out as a servant, like gives her like a cup of wine, and she like shakily like drains it and like puts it down. I think there are a great many things that you can do for me, Skjalmod Harson. I think my father talked to you about marriage before.
He nods. Your father promised this, but it was not set in stone. And I would hear your choice on the matter before I would hear your answer. Know that if not, my people and Skjalvik is still ever the aid of Heideborg for the love I bore your father.
It's a complicated thing. And I'm not stupid. I know many of the men out there think that I'm a child. And they think that I could not do this alone. And maybe they're right. Maybe I couldn't. Maybe I could. I don't know. I don't want to test it. And everything I've heard of you and seen of you lines up with what I was taught to think a good man is. And there are too many wolves in the world and too many enemies everywhere that you look.
I think Skjalmod admires the older lady, the older woman, and was maybe in some small way hoping that it would not be the pragmatic rationale, like the Drovo choice. But he's, he knows that he is battle knocked and one armed, and just lord of a fen, and so kind of swallows and collects himself the pragmatism in her approach, agreeing with it. Really, it resonates with him, and he says, "Oh well, I would be honored."
Good. And she like takes another drink of the wine and like looks up at you and like make eye contact for the first time in this sort of conversation. Don't really know what's appropriate now. And there's like a grin and like a sort of like it's been decided that like pragmatically you're going to marry, and now like what's the correct sort of thing to do? But she just kind of like smiles. We'll have to have a big wedding, I think.
Perhaps there'll be time for that. But for now, we should grieve for Einar and set things to right in the land, as you say. There are wolves about.
Yes.
There'll be time to think of that. But in here, and he'll look about the room and maybe with his eyes dismiss anyone who's in there. Just relax and grieve. And he'll like stay with her for a time. And I imagine she's probably like quite exhausted by now, so give her space to see to everyone outside after like many hours have passed.
Yeah, a long time will go by before she's like ready, like to announce it to the castle that he's like dead. And there'll be a great sort of like sadness that passes through the men, because all of them really admired Godriksson, the likable guy, and like much like Skjalmod, like took on the hardships of his own men, and so drinks are raised. There's the portal. Like drinks are raised, and people drink to Godriksson's name.
As soon as like the shouts for Godriksson have gone down, maybe even just as the ale horns have been put in their rests, I'll draw my sword and kneel before Gothild and say the oath of friendship that I swore to Einar, and kind of try and prompt everyone else, like trapping them in that moment, to swear loyalty to his daughter, like publicly as an oath under a hall with mead about.
Very good, very clever. Grim is like first to do so. He's like boom down on his knee, and a great many follow. There's like a brief sort of like look between some of the men. You probably wouldn't even spot it, but Nocky would. He's been on the lookout for it. You'd see a couple of men in the back sort of like thinking about it for a moment, but like in this place, it would be insane to like make any sort of scene. And so under like the hall with the mead, everyone goes down and swears loyalty.
To Gothild Godriksdottir.
To Gothild. And the mead comes fast and thick for the night, all night, and almost everyone brings himself to drunkenness as everyone recounts tales of Godriksson, of his like even-handedness, of his like sense of humor, of his bravery. All through the night, people talk about him, and it's like a warm and pleasant evening, though it's cold outside. Thoughts of like what's to be done for a funeral are like always in the back of everyone's mind. A man of like this sort of station, and so like some people kind of discuss somewhat morbidly, but it's kind of like not meant disrespectfully, like what's to be done on that sort of front. But mostly it's stories about the man and like celebrating his life deep into the evening and night.
I would definitely give a speech recounting the brief time I knew Einar, and that there was no hesitation in him to face Rennick's wolf tooth and meet the fate that the Norns had woven for him, and that he knew when to reach and accept when he'd reached too far, like thinking inside an homage to Thros, but not speaking about the blade implicitly. And that he like rose to protect his people when there are other lords abound who do not, and so that we're all honoured under him. And I'll raise my toast amongst the many that would come over the night.
Yeah, those sentiments would be echoed like throughout the night. Some kind of stories celebrating the man, and the drinking goes on until the sun starts to rise. And like bleary-eyed, people like find their way to either their beds or to benches in the hall. And there's like a blur of activity that follows in like the week, like thoughts of funeral planning happen almost immediately, and they're not at the coast here, and so a pyre seems most appropriate, or burial in a mound. And then all these sort of thoughts go through, and then it's decided that the Corpse Mountain, where you had gone, was the best place to bring him into like a mausoleum. And Rogvar, who had brought you there, will like eagerly, not eagerly, but like enthusiastically go about the business of like commissioning the mausoleum and things like that.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, I just love that guy. I remember that's like his family, his ancestral occupation. So good.
Yeah. So he'll like go about the process of like planning a mausoleum and stuff like that, and like taking care of it and ensuring that it's placed in the right place next to the sun. And all this sort of stuff will be underway. And all through those like weeks leading up to it, there will be lots of planning involved. In that time also, there's planning of the wedding that's to come as soon as possible. Gothild is like keen to have that happen soon. And like it's partially like an eagerness, but also partially like you think like a pragmatic need for that to be like solidified. And that would like be talked about a lot, and where the best place for it is it here? Is it the Fens? Like what's the best place for it?
Best place is here, I think, and invite whatever promontories I can from Cohen and Casterling, maybe other veterans like Thorin, to come and bear witness to it at Heideborg, and kind of tie them in an attempt in a similar way, binding them into this region, like with what's going on.
And all this like talk of weddings probably makes Naki think of Fenya back in Skjalvik, sitting around working in Ira's bar all these weeks. Do you have any interest in like going to get Fenya or bringing her here? Because you'll be here for a few weeks, I guess, or maybe you can go back to Skjalvik. I don't know what Skjalmod says.
I think I'll just stay here with Thorin and like get everyone else to go back or to their business and sort things out in other places, like free them up. So if Noki wanted to go see Fenya, there's nothing like to bind you at Heideborg.
I mean, he'll go wherever his Jarl sends him. But if
We should check back in.
Yeah, if the choice is put out there, he probably would go back.
Yeah, we should get just like check back in with Skjalvik and make sure everything's going swimmingly there. You know my mind as well as any. Thorin won't leave my side. so it's up to you. Give my best to Fenya. I trust that everything will be well from there in time for the wedding. And I'll see you in the weeks to come.
So you can make your way back to Skjalvik with some of the men, and like you'll find that it's much as you left it. The Fenway is like well maintained or whatever. There's no problems getting there. It seems like even the graffiti has like lessened, and like the defacing of the Fenway is not so bad. And there's no like terrible disaster that's befallen Skjalvik in your absence. Like the warriors have been there for a while now, and like Magni and Skander and Lokir have been running the place pretty well. And like as you like make your way to Ira's bar, you like stick your head in the door and you're like looking around, and you can like see Ira who like waves, and then you're just like bashed onto the ground by Fenya who like leaps on you from the side. Where the fuck have you been? What the hell is this? Weeks!
And here I was afraid you'd forget my face.
Ah, it's okay, then I fucking remember it.
Huh. I suppose that's true.
She like gives you like a tight hug, and Ira will walk over and say, she couldn't do enough. Worked at the Larsaw, so she did. The whole tavern loves her. She sings beautifully. Did you know that? She sings like a Valkyrie.
Are you sure?
Fenya like punches you in the arm, and Ira gives you this look.
I'm just saying, the last time I heard you sing, it was like two rusted knives being rubbed against one another.
Oh yeah, and you have the voice of the heavens, have you? Mm-hmm. Listen, if you drink that much mead, nobody sings well.
I don't need to have the voice. I have the looks.
She like laughs at that, and so does Ira.
All right, you're both laughing a little too hard. But it's good to see you.
I missed you, you fucking idiot.
Oh, hey, I brought you something.
Her eyes like light up at the thought of a present.
Close your eyes, put out your hands.
She does.
And he's just gonna pick her up over his shoulder and carry her outside. Just a kind of whoop.
Yeah, she like squeals and like punches you in the back a few times.
And I'll take her to the long hall, set her down. And there's a couple of pieces of jewelry he's probably picked up in Heideborg with the merchants and things there. And he'll lay them out. He said, this one was apparently from Gunland. I think this one's Valleyland, but I'm not sure. That merchant, he talked a load of shit.
She like looks at all the jewelry, like can't believe all this wealth. And she like keeps looking at it and then into you as if like, okay, where's the punchline to this? Is this really mine?
Well, you're not going to put them on?
Naki, these are jewels for like a lady.
And tonight, you'll drink like one. I won't, however. I'm going to get drunk and fall down. You can carry me home.
Wouldn't be the first time. And then she like leaps upon the jewelry and is like just like stunned by it. She's never seen this kind of money before in her life. And will like eagerly put it on and then like will like show you and then like walk around the longhouse and like show like Chiolric, who's like, oh yes, very good. And like all these like people, she's just like, look what I got.
And I think you'll kind of watch this with a little bit of sorrow in a way. Because he's trying to bring Fenya joy, but he knows the kind of past is still there and still needs to be rectified. But you'll watch her as she rushes away. And then he will go about his duties before he goes to get drunk.
Yeah, she'll spend most of the day like wandering around. After she goes through the longhouse and like shows everybody, she'll like walk around the entirety of Skjalvik and just like you'll see her a few times as you're going about your duties, like walking back and forth in front of a house until like the person inside the house like looks out and is like, oh, very nice, Fenya. And she's like, oh, thank you. And then like wanders off to like the next place, making sure that everyone actually like looks at her and says something about the jewels and whatnot. Yeah, and that night, you can get absolutely shit-faced. And the wedding plans are made in Heideborg. All these like considerations have to be made. Like to get married, you have to. Well, Skjalmod has to like get a sword of an ancestor from a tomb. This is like part of the tradition. It's also like important that the bridal party and the groom party like have a race back to the long hall after the ceremony and stuff like that. So all these like considerations are being made, and it's going to be a big wedding, obviously. And so lots of thoughts are going into it, and like Gothild is like planning it, although not with like the sort of girlish glee that you would imagine. I mean, she's not like unhappy about it. She's definitely enthused and like happy, but it's not like a Fenya-esque sort of like excitement. It's very like, okay, well, we have to do this, but this is important, and we got to make sure that we do this, and everyone sees this and whatnot. Still kind of like pragmatically thinking about it.
Lady, we should take a moment and put down these things a moment. Let the Gothi determine the things with the race, the traditions and whatnot. What must be done, I will. And if there is none of it, like if there is stuff that you would not have of it, then let it be so. I'm more interested in like honest oaths before the gods, law and life, than I am for those other things. And if you would have it that way too, then it can be made so. There are so many here to help. I know there are many tasks before you, but let us help. Delegate these things.
Yeah, the two of you are like in one of the big sort of drawing rooms with the big table, and there's all these like bits like laid out in front of you. Things that she's like written and things that she's reading and stuff, and she'll like sit back in the chair and like give you this look. You're right. It's supposed to be a joyful time. This is a lot of work. Shouldn't be work. My father always said that it shouldn't be work, it should be easy.
I know I wasn't always right.
No. No, he wasn't.
What vexes you other than this? And he'll like look at some parchment about like, I don't know, lavender or some flowers or whatever, and just be like, ugh, move that aside.
A great many things. Worry about other Jarls and what's happening with these Skulfin who are coming down, and a lot.
Soon enough they'll come. They'll think you weak as a woman to rule Heideborg. They'll be used against them. And the other Jarls about here will know the state of things. And once this marriage is done, our two provinces united, larger than any around us, with two armies to make one of, will hold the fjord against those Skulfin. The other lords will come to see reason and trade and friendship with us when we reach out our hand with the king's own blessing. And all will be well.
She like takes a deep breath and like closes her eyes and like processes that.
And when he realizes he's said that last bit, he realizes that that was bullshit, and he knew it. And like the fact that he likes her tells him that she knows that that was bullshit too, the last bit. And so he would say, I'm sorry, like could be worse.
Yeah, she like laughs at that. It would be nice if all was well.
Wouldn't it, he says, I could juggle and you'll like go for some cheese or something.
Maybe someday. And she'll like smile and put a hand on yours.
Come, we'll summon the Gothi and the steward and have this set out. Maybe a walk amongst the people or in the orchards. Maybe even Thorin will let us like steal around a corner for a kiss, but most likely not, and he'll go to Rise.
She'll laugh at that as well. And I imagine Thorin probably like doesn't laugh in the back of the room where she's standing.
She just clears her throat.
And that night, when I like have like seen Gothild to bed, I want to go and over those plans and organize everything to a T.
Yeah, the wedding stuff.
Yep, and just like sort it for her, like kill two birds with one stone, sort it for her, and like kind of dictate the parameters of it to have an influence in how it will happen, like assert. Maybe like the course of the thing, as far as like how elaborate that the whole ceremony will be. I want to send letters off to the Koning Castellig, to the king and others, and invite them. Obviously, like because it'll be quick. I don't expect too many or anything to come, but I still will ask. And I'm like seriously contemplating asking Flokison, and I think for the first time I'll break like a law or protocol, and I won't invite that neighbor to my wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's like one of those things where I'm fucked if I do and I'm fucked if I don't, and I don't want him there to like spoil the day. So I guess I'll just have to eat shit tomorrow. But for today, wedding cake, so to speak, is my rationale for that. But yeah, and obviously I won't invite this Orm, who that honourable Iskolfan warrior spoke of.
Yeah. He's obviously like next in line, I guess.
Yep.
Would be your impression.
Yep. And I'll just like pour over the details and sort it out, like organize the details of this race we have to do with her and her family.
Yeah, so like the process of the wedding is that she will go into like the baths with all of the married women in Heideborg, and all of the like older women, and they will like there's like a certain haircut that you have before you're married as a woman, and they will like change that, and they'll like bathe and whatever else. They'll come out. In that time, you have to go to a tomb, like an ancestor's tomb or somebody. You have to take a sword from that tomb. Like you go in as a bachelor and you come out a married man, like a grown-up, basically, which is ridiculous to think because Skjalmod's like an old man almost. But that's like the process. And you come back.
29, but that's
Okay.
an old man in his cloth.
She's
She's a couple of years older than me.
Yeah, I think she's 30 is what I said. Yeah, and so you go through that process, and then like everybody comes to the ceremony. Like an animal is sacrificed, and then you're like officially married, and then both the bridal party and the groom party run from the ceremony to the long hall, and whoever gets there first, like whoever party gets there first, second has to serve drinks to the other party for the night. But before anyone enters into the hall, you have to carry her across the threshold, which actually presents a problem with one arm, thinking about it.
I could put her over my shoulder, no worries.
Yep. And then when you enter, you have to stab the sword you got from the tomb into the ceiling, and like the deeper it goes, like the more beneficial the marriage is going to be. And then it's like so complicated, but all these things you're like figuring out and like thinking about that you have to go through this like wedding process. And you're like figuring out who's going to be the Gothi and who's going to do this and who's going to do that. But you spend like the night thinking about it and figuring it out.
Wolf will be our celebrant. And I know just the singers to play as the wedding band.
Yes, indeed.
We met them already, and they sang for the troll, and they were quite good at Skjalvik, so we'll get them.
Yep, Velspar and his traveling minstrels.
And I think I'll get Halvar and Noki and Thorin to come with me. I want to go up to, and I wouldn't tell this to them until we're on the way, but up to the Grandsire's tomb to seek Frost for the second time.
Oh my god.
So
gonna kill you.
Back in Skjalvik, things are going well apart from some missing chickens, but that's basically every day of every week. But other than that, like there's nothing exciting happening in Skjalvik. People are going about their business. You'd have a brief chat with the wolf probably while you're there, Nucky. But other than that, like things are fine. And the invites go out and responses come back. Like you have been invited as the Thane of Felaliga to go, as well as like several others are like all invited to go to this wedding or whatever. So you'll get this like official invitation, even though like you spend most of the time with Skjalmod anyway. Like this messenger will arrive and like hand you a letter that I don't know if Nucky can read. Can Nucky read?
No, there's no way.
Yeah, so he'll hand you this letter, and like maybe you like open it and like give it a look, and then like look at the guy, and he's like, "Oh, you're cordially invited to the wedding of and go through this whole spiel." But yeah, is there anything else you want to do in Skjalvik, or anything else you guys want to do in Heideborg?
I think Noki would just enjoy the peace and quiet.
Yeah, it's probably going to get pretty loud.
Yeah. I think he will just revel in the fact that there's nothing to do and be quite glad of it.
Yeah, you can spend a few blissful days, weeks even, in Skjalvik as the preparations are made, enjoying the quiet. Okay, so you want to go to the tomb, Skjalmod?
Yep. And when we pass the, I don't know, Einar's tomb, or like maybe some of his closer kin, that's like, if they haven't copped on already, that's when they will cop on. And I'll say, that's right, we're going for the blade.
So you would have gathered Halvar, Thorin, and Noki with you?
Not if Noki's happy, enjoying peace and like Fenya, then I wouldn't disturb him. If he hasn't come back to Heideborg already, it's not like I'd call to wait for him to come.
Okay.
Kind of thing. But if he wants to be here, hint, hint, then certainly. But doesn't have to. And so, yeah, I guess us three, unless you say otherwise, checks.
No, he probably would at some point venture back north. Maybe Fenya has been bending his ear to see some more, to see this place he's been going on about.
And the castle, where should we go into the wedding in like a flash dress and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So that gives him an excuse to travel back.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, you arrive at Heideborg maybe some days later with Fenya, who like cannot believe the scale of the place and the walls and things like that. But she's like dressed up nice to come here, and she's got her jewelry on. She hasn't taken it off since she got it, and will like excitedly talk to you about the size of this place and like the walls and like whoever lives here must be a proper lady and stuff like that. But you can like leave her here to talk excitedly to Gothild about wedding plans and whatnot, which I'm sure is a recipe for disaster as the rest of you like head up towards the corpse mountain.
Thorin is glad to leave the village. She's been idle, and it has not been good for her. She's spent a lot of time with Grim and perhaps Halvar as well, keeping her body and her mind occupied with the training. And so the chance to be on horseback and to be away from the people here is welcome until Skjalmod reveals the true purpose.
So like up on the snowy corpse mountain, going past Godric's tomb and then Einar's tomb, up and up.
Yeah, and I guess it's like pretty humiliating for Skjalmod in front of his companions, just like falling so many times and failing and like slipping and hurting himself and having to like ward off the helping hands a few times before he has to acquiesce and be helped up to things that he just can't do anymore. And this climb is kind of him climbing over that as well. And he's just silent unless probed.
You continue like climbing upwards, I guess, past all these increasingly ornate like mausoleums and things like that as you go further and further up the mountain.
It is best left alone, Skjalmod.
I agree. That would be best. But when war comes through here, or when fate decrees, someone will take this blade. One of those bandits who stayed, who spoke amongst each other and have seen where Hrothgar pays to go and do his work. Or some legend or some scry or some witch that sees it in her blood milk in the frozen waste. And if it is disturbed, I would rather me that does it. My will was weak last time, but I've seen the path to Valhall and the stony road to hell forsaken by a Valkyrie. And I'm stronger now for it. I will not fail a second time, and this a worthy bride price for Gothild, Einar's daughter.
Her grandsire's blade would also be a worthy bride price. Her brother's, her father's.
No, that'd be easy. I just merely walk up and take them.
It is best left alone, Skjalmod. That
He
is my
turns.
counsel.
He nods, thankful for it, and turns to Noki and Halvar. And I think just his body language is probably similar to Thorin. This is a us moment, not out in public, in the social hierarchy moment. Well, what say you?
I think Halvar would stomp his feet in the snow, and he blows to warm his hands. Shrugs his shoulders, looks to Noki. I don't. You would know better than I. I will go and do what you say.
If I fail, you may have to kill me. Will you do that, Halvar?
He falters. Again, he looks to Noki. Then he looks to the woman. Yes, I would. It must be done. And then he would look to Thorin to gauge her reaction.
She's grim-faced, but she nods at you approvingly.
You would see him visibly relax a bit. Then he goes silent.
I didn't listen to you in the fens, and 13 good men died. Thorin and I didn't listen to you in the hills, and I lost my arm, and Einar lost his belly. Maybe the gods would deem me a fool and take my arm if I didn't listen to you a third time. And he'll just change and walk to the nearest tomb and take just a rusty blade from it from some nameless ancestor.
Thorin's face softens, and the relief is visible in the way her shoulders change and her grip changes. She thought she would have to kill you when you took the blade in your hand.
And so you take a rusty blade, not the great and legendary blade that rests atop the mountain, and maybe leave the mountain with reservations that you keep to yourself, Skjalmod, about if you don't take it, who will?
Yeah, I'm going to have to do this by myself.
taking the blade, you make your way back down towards the forest where you had met the Ulf previously. And you see the offering that you had left is gone as you pass through unharmed and back down past the ford towards Heideborg. All the preparations are being made, and it's a bustle with activity and excitement with the wedding to come. But we will look at that wedding next session, I think. It's approaching quite late here. So that's going to be it for today. Thanks, guys. That was
well played, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you did, see you next time.